Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the April 1st, 2025 meeting of the Carrboro Town Council. I would say April Fool, but I mean, we all are in here, so I guess not. April 1st, 2025 meeting of the Carrboro Town Council. And I would like to ask Liza to come up and give us a poem on April 1st. Is it April Fool poem? Doubt it.
It's more of a library poem. I'm going to read my poem for the Drakeford Library Complex.
Thank you.
That I read that day of
Great.
the
We'd
opening.
love to hear it again.
And
It's wonderful.
in honor of Poetry Month, too, which is April, starting now. So everybody write poems.
Can I, before you do that, and this is my fault, council members, can we get a motion and a second to excuse Mayor Pro Tem Now, who will not be here?
So moved, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. All right, it's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, motion carries 6-0. Back to you, Liza. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Hi. For our new library in Carrboro. In the beginning, it is said that all came alive with letters. If all the letters made into words are collected in books, all that exists, all that has been, and all that could be must be held in books as well. Books hold the voices of people and lift up stories that might not be heard or remembered. I see why they are collected and why they are banned. They contain history, ideas, experiences, dreams and daydreams, hopes and ideas for the future. They hold each of our spirits of wonder. In picking up a book, we begin to hear the lives and stories of others and to realize who we are and who we could be in this world. Maybe we begin in a land with dragons or queens or heroes and villains, or as part of a community. Maybe we see ourselves as rabbits or dogs or lions or lambs or goats, or as the star of the story or as the moon. And maybe we wonder more about what we might make of our own lives, of this life we share with each other. When we lose ourselves in a book, we come back to plan our next adventure, our next move. We come back to save the world. These are daring, system-breaking, empire-crashing roles. Yes, that makes us dangerous. If going to the library means walking among shelves of books, quieting ourselves among people in a quiet space, enjoying silence in a loud world, selecting a book to sit and read, to get lost in, to come back from stronger with more ideas, more wonder, more sense of self, more sense of belonging and of community, we should definitely do that. If we can get all that from letters into words, into books, into a library, we should read and visit our library every day. We should greet the books and the stories, wave at our neighbors and friends, smile at the librarians, and we should all say thank you and more, please. More letters, more words, more books, more libraries, more, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that poem again. Just was a cherry on the top for a wonderful occasion as we did the grand opening and ribbon cutting of the Drakeford Library Complex. So we have quite a few proclamations, like 10. April Fool. So the first proclamation is Alex here. Alex, sit right there. So I'll have you to sit until I get finished, then you'll be able to come up and say a few words if you would like. Thank you for being here. Proclamation recognizing Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Whereas sexual violence is common. Over half of women and almost 1/3 of men in the United States have experienced sexual violence involving physical contact in their lifetimes. And whereas sexual violence starts early, more than half of female rape survivors and more than 40% of male rape survivors reported that they were raped when they were minors. And whereas sexual violence disproportionately affects some groups, women and racial and ethnic minority groups, trans and gender non-conforming people, people with disabilities, and children experience a higher burden of sexual violence. And whereas sexual violence is costly, rape is the most costly crime to its survivors, totaling over $3 trillion in lifetime societal costs, considering such factors as medical costs, lost work, productivity, pain and suffering, and lost quality of life. And whereas in 2001, the National Sexual Violence Resource Center organized the first nationwide Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and in 2009, forever President Barack Obama became the first president to proclaim April as Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And whereas the Orange County Rape Crisis Center, a nonprofit agency that has served this community since 1974, is working to stop sexual violence and its impact through support, education, and advocacy. And whereas the Orange County Rape Crisis Center assisted more than 950 survivors of sexual violence, their loved ones, and community professionals in 2023 to ensure no survivor faces their trauma or healing alone. And whereas the Orange County Rape Crisis Center works with the county's 2 school systems and other groups to provide students with age-appropriate information about violence prevention, reaching more than 15,500 youth and adults each year. And whereas the Orange County Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Response Committee brings together members of law enforcement, the medical community, the legal system, and community advocates to improve services for survivors of sexual assault who come forward. And whereas victim blaming continues to be an enormous problem in instances of rape and sexual assault. And now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Barbara M. Foushee, Mayor of the town of Carrboro, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2025 to be Sexual Assault Awareness Month in Carrboro. I encourage all residents to speak out against sexual violence and to support the local community's efforts to prevent and respond to these crimes this, the first day of April 2025. And I would like to invite Alex up to accept this proclamation and say a few words if she would like to. Welcome, Alex.
I appreciate it so much. I'll keep this quick. I first want to say that in the face of federal divestment, which is something that the Orange County Rape Crisis Center has been speaking about for a long time, it has become very clear that the version of OCRCC that exists in the future depends entirely on the degree to which our local community makes it a priority. So that being said, it's an honor to be here. It's an honor to hear your words and accept this proclamation in light of this critical moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. We appreciate you being here. Can I swing this podium around? Is it gonna distract? Mr. Joyner, you want to do it? So I want, you know what? Because I don't want to mess up anything, and then we'll. Right. So I didn't want to swing it first. Oh yes, right here. Yep.
Let's pull it a little bit this way. There we go.
Okay.
Is that good? Or
Yes.
you want further?
That's good. Thank you. The next proclamation, and we'll have Liza, our Carrboro Poet Laureate, to come up once I finish reading the poem, or you can come now if you want to stand, but I figure you might want to relax. It's up to you. Come on up here. Proclamation in honor of Poetry Month. And I usually insert a poem in the proclamation this year. It is Fury and Faith by Amanda Gorman. You will be told this is not a problem, not your problem. You will be told now is not the time for change to begin, told that we cannot win. But the point of protest isn't winning, it's holding fast to the promise of freedom, even when fast victory is not promised. Meaning, we cannot stand up to police if we cannot cease policing our imagination, convincing our communities that this won't work when the work hasn't even begun, that this can wait when we've already waited out 1,000 suns. By now we understand that white supremacy and the despair it demands are as destructive as any disease. So when you're told that your rage is reactionary, remind yourself that rage is our right. It teaches us it is time to fight. In the face of injustice, not only is anger natural, but necessary because it helps carry us to our destination. Our goal is never revenge, just restoration. Not dominance, just dignity. Not fear, just freedom. Just justice. Whether we prevail is not determined by all the challenges that are present, but by all the change that is possible. And though we are unstoppable, if we ever feel we might fail, if we be fatigued and frail, when our fire can no longer be fueled by fury, we will always be fortified by this faith, found in the anthem, the vow. Black lives matter, no matter what. Black lives are worth living, worth defending, worth every struggle. We owe it to the fallen to fight, but we owe it to ourselves to never stay kneeling when the day calls us to stand up. Together, we envision a land that is liberated, not lawless. We create a future that is free, not flawless. Again and again, over and over, we will stride up every mountainside, magnanimous and modest. We will be protected and served by a force that is honored and honest. This is more than protest. It's a promise. And I was feeling all of that. Okay. Right. Okay. Proclamation. Whereas the Academy of American Poets designated the month of April as National Poetry Month in 1996 to celebrate the legacy and ongoing achievements of poets in the United States. Introduce the pleasures and benefits of reading poetry, bring poets and poetry to the public in immediate and innovative ways, and make poetry an important part of children's education. And whereas the town of Carrboro established the position of Poet Laureate in 2002 to enhance the presence of poetry in the social and civic life of Carrboro. And whereas several free local poetry events are scheduled for this April, including a Writing Together workshop on April 1st with Carrboro Poet Laureate Liza Wolfe Francis, and the monthly Recreation Parks and Cultural Resources Poets Open Mic Night via Zoom on April 2nd, and the Lanza's Cafe bi-monthly Poetry Open Mic Night on April 12th and April 26th, and a Poetry Popcorn and Pie event at the Century Center on April 15th, featuring local poets, including Poet Laureate Liza Wolfe Francis, and an open mic, and an Earth Day seedling giveaway at the Carrboro Farmers Market on April 20th, where young people can contribute a line to this year's community poem, and a workshop with former Poet Laureate Gary Phillips on April 25th, and a youth poetry writing workshop as part of Carrboro in Motion at Collins Crossing Apartment on April 27th. And whereas the town's signature poetry event, the annual West End Poetry Festival, will be held in October to bring together poets of diverse styles, backgrounds, and stages of development to share poems and their love of poetry. Now, therefore, I, Barbara M. Foushee, Mayor of the town of Carrboro, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim April 2025 to be Poetry Month in Carrboro. I encourage all residents to celebrate poetry and poets by reading, listening to, and sharing poems, and by attending Poetry Month events, which are listed on the town's website at carboronc.gov. This, the first day of April 2025. I am so pleased to present this to our Poet Laureate, Liza, who is always on point with her poetry. We just appreciate her so much, and I am grateful that she is here to accept the proclamation and say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Foushee, and thank you, Town Council and Town of Carrboro. We have such a huge, vibrant poetry scene here in Carrboro, and I just feel so honored always to be the Poet Laureate. I'm the Poet Laureate until the end of December, and we will have a new Poet Laureate, which will be, the application will be announced probably coming up in May for anybody who might be interested in being the Poet Laureate. But we have all kinds of events and so many creative people and poets here in this town, and the support of the town is just awesome, and I feel very, very grateful to that. And keep writing poetry. There are people writing a poem every day this month. You could be one of those people. Do it. Write poetry. Love it. Thank you. Thank you.
you say December of this year?
End of this year, yeah.
What?
Yes.
Who said you could leave? Can't leave. We love Liza. We do, and appreciate her. So the next one and the last one that I'm going to read before I call up Councilmember Haven O'Donnell to read the Earth Day proclamation. This is Food Waste for Food Waste Prevention Week, and Kristen is here. Hi, Kristen. She's here to accept this proclamation. Food Waste Prevention Week. Whereas over 1/3 of the food produced in the United States is never eaten, and whereas food is the single largest category of material placed in municipal landfills and and that's a double, municipal landfills are the third largest source, of human-related methane emissions in the United States. And whereas North Carolina residents generated about 2.70 million tons of food waste in 2021, and whereas Orange County's 2017 waste audit showed 25.3% of Orange County municipal solid waste was food waste, and the town of Carrboro's 2016 waste audit showed that waste from single-family homes was 28.2% food waste. And whereas North Carolina ranks 9th in food insecurity, approximately 10.9% of North Carolina's population, about 1.2 million people, experience food insecurity, particularly among minority and low-income populations. And whereas, according to the Food Bank of Central and Eastern North Carolina, in 2021, there are more than 18,000 food insecure individuals in Orange County, including 3,700 children. Whereas a family of 4 can save an average of $1,500 annually on uneaten food, and whereas preventing and reducing food waste presents opportunities to increase food security for all, foster productivity and economic efficiency, preserve our natural resources, promote energy conservation, and address climate change. And whereas preventing food waste and reducing food-related greenhouse gas emissions are integral to meeting goals in the Carrboro Connects Comprehensive Plan and Carrboro's Community Climate Action Plan goal for the town and community to reduce 2010 levels of greenhouse gas emissions by 80% by the year 2030. And now, therefore, I, Barbara M. Foushee, Mayor of the town of Carrboro, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim April 7th through April 13, 2025, to be Food Waste Prevention Week in Carrboro, and urge all residents to commit to reducing food waste the first day of April 2025. And I would like to invite Kristen up to accept this proclamation. She is here from our Public Works Department. Welcome, and thank you.
Very much. Good evening. I'd like to thank you for recognizing the importance of preventing food waste. Food waste impacts our environment, economy, and the overall well-being of our community. We'd like to encourage all community members to participate in meaningful actions to promote food waste prevention, as such things as understanding best buy dates, proper food storage, and participating in food recovery efforts to make lasting difference. To learn more, we encourage you to visit our website, I apologize.
No, you're okay.
To learn more, including ways to donate food, please visit our food waste webpage, and together we can reduce food insecurity, save money, and advance our climate action initiatives.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Kristen.
you.
We appreciate it. So now, Councilmember Haven O'Donnell, if you could come on up, and I'll sit down.
Okay. All right, this is a proclamation for Earth Month, but we all know every day is Earth Day. Every day, in every way. Whereas the Earth is our shared home, and we must all work together to address environmental challenges such as climate change, pollution, and loss of biodiversity. And whereas the month of April is recognized as Earth Month, a time to focus on environmental awareness and action, and whereas the residents of Carrboro, North Carolina, are committed to protecting our planet and ensuring a sustainable future for generations to come, and whereas climate action is a pillar of the Carrboro Connects comprehensive plan, and the town is committed to reducing community carbon emissions and to making our community more resilient to climate change, and whereas in 2025 we celebrate 55 years anniversary of Earth Day, and millions of people worldwide will come together for Earth Day activities, events, and to take action. And whereas the theme of this year's Earth Day is Our Power, Our Planet, reminding us that grassroots people power, has always been at the heart of Earth Day, because when concerned individuals unite with a common purpose, their collective voice can push governments and corporations to make bold commitments and take decisive action. And now, therefore, on behalf of Mayor Barbara Foushee for the town of Carrboro, I do hereby proclaim April to be Earth Month in Carrboro and encourage all residents, businesses, and organizations to learn about environmental issues and share that knowledge with their communities, make sustainable choices in their daily life, participate in community climate action initiatives, and advocate for state and federal legislation to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and build resilience and climate harms. And be it therefore resolved, the Town of Carrboro Council invites everyone to attend the Carrboro Earth Day and Open Streets event on April 6th from 12 to 4 on East and West Weaver Streets, and enjoy car-free Weaver Street as downtown Carrboro transforms into vibrant spaces for cycling, walking, and exploring eco-friendly activities and learning about opportunities to take action towards a greener future. This, the first day of April, not April Fools, April 2025. And I'd like to invite Carrie and Tilly to come up and receive the proclamation. They are our community champions in environmental action. And Carrie, would you also make sure to say something about compost and food waste?
Thank you so much for inviting me to this. The work that was just described is really hard work. When the election results came in November, it hit me really hard. Mm-hmm. And so as I was thinking about a couple of words to say, I reflected on a book that a friend of mine gave me. I'm going to read you the title real quick, and there's a poem in here. I didn't know that I was going to be in this crowd. The impossible will take a little while, perseverance and hope in troubled times. And the poem is called The Peace of Wild Things by Wendell Berry. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be. Sorry. I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Thank you all for having me here as well. Tilly mentioned, his reaction after the election. The day after the election, I put on my Fair Oaks Compost T-shirt and I went to work. So I want to thank the town of Carrboro for all that they're doing to promote Earth Day, Earth Month events. not just this month, but throughout the year. The lawsuit against Duke Energy, also the Green Neighborhoods program are two things that really resonate with me as a resident of Carrboro. Our Green Neighborhoods grant has given me a little bit of purpose in this community to have an impact that's a little bit larger than what I can do in my own household, and that's been very motivating. And I think if towns are going to make a difference, they need progressive leaders. But if towns are going to make a difference, they also need community members that are willing to make some change as well. And the Green Neighborhoods program is one way that I think you're empowering some of your residents to help with that effort. And I think Carrboro is unique in the sense that there are a lot of residents who do want to make some change. And the Green Neighborhoods program is one way that we can do that. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and so we bring our whole selves into these spaces in these really weird times that we're all experiencing, and it's okay to cry sometimes. You know, it's frustrating, it's hurtful. You know, it's a whole lot of things, but together we can, and together we will. And so I just appreciate the comments from Carrie, the poem by Tilly, right? The poem by Tilly. No, we're human beings. We're not robots, you know. And I think we're all being impacted by what's happening at this attempt at reshaping at the federal government level. But we are your town leaders. We see you and we hear you, you know, and we're here to work with you. And so just appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you. We are. Let me make sure I didn't miss something, because I did that last meeting. We're down to the town manager's update. Town manager Tony.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council members. I just would piggyback on the Earth Day month proclamation, and just to mention that the town of Carrboro was reached out to by earthday.org and as a partner in this Earth Day event because of the great work that the town is doing in this space. And so we will have a pin on their national map about what we're doing around Earth Day and some of the environmentally friendly programs that we have in place. So I wanted to acknowledge that. Secondly, today we also got notification that the town of Carrboro is a finalist for an All-American Cities Award. And so we are one of 20 communities that became a finalist in the nation who've demonstrated exceptional civic and capital and a commitment to strengthening environmental sustainability through inclusive community engagement. So a couple of the projects that we submitted were like Carrboro in Motion, the neighborhood green grants that you just heard about. And so our collective efforts and work around empowering people to make a difference in the environment and raising community voices has stood out across the nation. So a press release will come out tomorrow about it, and the next phase will happen in June. So fingers crossed we will hopefully get that award. That's it, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Town Manager Tony, for that update. Excited to be one of the finalists from across the nation. Carrboro, North Carolina, the borough. That's us. So we're down to the public comment period. I do have one person signed up. Is there someone else that may want to sign up? Okay, I have you. I'll just call you up. Yes. I think we have Miss Makita. Subject matter is landings at Winmore, and there she is. Good evening, Miss Makita. Please take note of the time. You have exactly 3 minutes, and welcome.
Respected Mayor and Carrboro Town Council, on behalf of the Landings Tenant Association, I'm here again kindly to ask you to support in correcting two injustices at the landings at Winmore. Replacing the bike rack removed in 2018 and restoring community space taken for the management company's use in 2020. They are violations of our rights, and we waited long enough, and it's time to act and set the record straight. Let's begin with the stolen bike rack. The Carrboro Land Use Ordinance, Article 13, requires developments to maintain recreational amenities for residents. That bike rack wasn't optional. It supported our silver level bicycle-friendly community status, and the Carrboro Connects plan focused on sustainable living. Since its deliberate removal, the Winmore HOA and Community Home Trust have dodged their duty to replace it, bowing down to a Community Home Trust board member complaint who resides next to the location over community needs. That's a clear violation of the ordinance intent to ensure shared amenities for all. We've been advocating for its return for 7 years. One neighbor proves the cost. He walks his bike at night along the same path to the dark, unmonitored back of the building, risking safety because Community Home Trust caved to a minority. Next, community space taken from the residents. What was once a community room with several computers and space for classes has been handed to the management company, reducing our access to vital gathering spots. Grow to Life held complimentary classes where kids, seniors, and everyone benefited, fostering skills and connections. The Carrboro Land Use Ordinance, Article 13, implies that these spaces should benefit residents and not private interests. By repurposing it, Community Home Trust favored management needs over the residents. Are we just giving resident rights to the management and the owner now? 7 years of emails, meetings, council speak it out, pleas and delays, 7 days to act. Is poetic justice for all. Enforce the ordinance. Restore the bike rack in 7 days to its secure, well-lit, original location, and reclaim our community space. Fairness and 7 years of patience, now is the time. Peace, love, fellowship, and community.
Thank you so much, Ms. Makita. Town Manager Tony, if you caught some of that, right, what she was asking. Okay. We have, what's your name, dear? You can come on. Lori? Yeah. Lori McLam. Oh, Lori McLam, come on up. Yeah, got 3 minutes. Thank you and welcome.
Yeah.
Lori McLam.
Everyone hear me? Madam Mayor and board members, my name's Lori McLam. I think some of you know me, but some members who are newer to the town may not. I worked as a police officer for the Carrboro Police Department from 2015 to 2022. I came today just to put a word in about something I keep seeing on your agendas, and that is the police department equity report and specific relating to traffic stops. When I started in 2015, well, a little bit of background. I've lived in Carrboro for 15 years. I moved here from Jacksonville, Florida, with our family to raise our 2 young boys in a safe place. I'm a physician assistant by training, have been for 25 years. I left medicine in order to become a police officer, and then I served with Carrboro Police Department for that duration. It is by far one of the most fulfilling experiences I've ever had in my life. It is also one of the hardest jobs. When I started in 2015 with the department, we were just starting to roll out the racial equity training, which was necessary. There's no question. I think a lot of people who know me know I am currently and now reflectively one of the biggest critics of the police in that their training. I think the training is a whole different topic. However, I'm also their biggest supporter because I did the job. And what I'm seeing, I kind of made some talking points, but now I'm just really I'm just really flying by the seat of my pants here, because this is a topic I'm very passionate about. So, I think with regards to traffic stops and traffic stop data, I keep seeing it come up over and over again, and I keep seeing policy trying to be revamped and shaped and ratcheted down for the purpose of racial equity. I think it's overall a very good thing, but what I think my concern is that there's not someone representing or having a discussion about policy who's done the job, and there's two groups of people who are just not having a conversation about this. Policy is being ratcheted down, and I think honestly it's not a bias problem that the town has. The officers I work with are great. I never saw any bias in traffic stops. They do their job professionally and well. I think the issue is lack of conversation from both sides. So I honestly would like to see, and I know my time is up, but as a citizen who formerly protected this town, I would like to see common sense policy made, driven by data and statistics, when it's compared to similar sized towns in the state region. And I think, bigger numbers to draw conclusions from, and an end point, an end goal. What are we looking for? What do we want to be? What are we striving to? And then, and then go from there. So that's all. I just think I keep seeing it come up, and I just wanted to say if anyone has questions, how to reach me. So,
Thank you so much.
I appreciate it.
Thank you so much,
Thank you for your
Lori.
time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that was not signed up would like to give public comment? I don't think so. So that was public comment for this evening. So we are down to the consent agenda. We have two items. Council members' approval of minutes, amendment to independent audit contract. Consent agenda is part of normal town business. Council members, are we ready to go ahead and approve the consent agenda in one single motion? Thank you so much.
Seconded.
All right, it's been moved and properly seconded that we approve the consent agenda as presented. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. And we are down to the general agenda. Town Manager Tony.
There's one general agenda item for this evening. It is an action item. The resolution adopting the Triangle West TPO Safe Streets for All Vision Zero Action Plan and supporting the SS4A demonstration grant application. Tina Moon, our interim planning director, will do the presentation.
Welcome, Tina.
Thank you. Great, thank you for that. Good evening, everyone. I believe we've touched on this topic a little bit in the past, so I'm going to kind of go through things, and then I'm happy to answer questions. I've added a couple of additional supplemental slides that have come largely from the appendices in case you want to talk more specifics about Carrboro and the results of the draft plan. Okay, a little bit of a review. So the Safe Streets for All, with the great little acronym of SS4A, is one of the infrastructure grant projects. There are two types of grants. One is the planning and demonstration grants, which is essentially writing a safety action plan, and the second is for implementation. The action plan is a prerequisite for submitting for implementation or infrastructure. Because the development of the action plan is somewhat of a large lift, we were delighted when our regional MPO, now TPO, took on the task of engaging with the consultant service. This is Tool. Many of you are familiar with that firm. To lead the drafting of the plan, and the plan is being prepared at the regional level. And so the item, again, just to repeat, the discussion for tonight is twofold. One is to take a look at and endorse the plan, and then second, to look at a specific grant application that the town is seeking to submit. So with regard to the individual grants, there is a relatively large minimum threshold for the implementation grants or the infrastructure grants, a smaller minimum for the demonstration grants. Looking at a couple of excerpts from the plan, because I think that's kind of what we're all looking for, about looking in the deep dive of how does this affect Carrboro, or rather, are the locations identified in the plan for Carrboro what we expected, or are there some surprises? This is kind of an interesting way to phrase this. The KSI refers to the killed or serious injury, so this is a metric of injury severity, largely injuries that led to someone going to the hospital or fatality. And this, I would, if I had written this bullet, would have reversed the order of it, because what it essentially is saying is that 100% of Carrboro's serious injuries occurred over the course of less than 14% of our road network. So that's the easier way of understanding this metric. And so you can kind of see the lines on the screen here of approximately those streets. And I think those are the ones we would have anticipated, being familiar with the area. I took the liberty of adding one extra slide because I thought that these were the types of things that you would be interested in. These came from the this is from Appendix D, which I believe in your packet starts at page 160, if you want to take a look at that. But the logical question for me looking at this would have been, how many fatalities have we had in Carrboro during this study period, which was from about 2017 to 2023, and we've had 4 fatalities. Those are the darker dots. The one shown on Rogers Road was actually on Old NC 86. That was one gentleman who drove off the road. The 2 were on NC 54, and then the other one, which involved a pedestrian, was at the intersection of Davie Road and Jones Ferry Road, and I believe that alcohol was a factor for the driver. So and then certainly taking a look at our locations related to race and equity that we always try to take a look at, and looking at the dark areas and thinking about NC 54 and our apartment complexes. The other reason for showing this, as well as some of the other locations, is to kind of gauge where are we in our project selection. And so I hope what you're seeing is that a lot of the projects that we either have in the hopper, either things that we are working on or things that we are working towards, align pretty well with these locations that are shown in the plan, and specifically the pedestrian signalized crossings at NC 54. And I have heard the latest from DOT is that they will be moving forward with that, going out to bid in April. So we hope that that will stay on track. In terms of strategies and actions, I think most of us are familiar with a number of these different recommendations and are trying to utilize them where they are appropriate here in the town. Performance metrics, the plan identifies 2 kind of benchmarks for reducing fatalities. The first one is a reduction of 50%, and then the last one would be 100% reduction of fatalities. I think here in Carrboro, any fatality is too many, as well as any serious injury. So I think we are striving to beat that timeline, which is really quite a ways out for a small town. And again, just a reminder of acronyms, HIN is High Injury Network. There's actually a glossary in the beginning of the plan that lists these. So that is the plan. With regard to the suggestion for the town to submit a demonstration grant, and again, this has a minimum threshold of $100,000, what we have suggested is something that would come to, we believe, about $350,000. There's a 20% match, so that would be about $70,000, and we have included that in our budget request for this year. And this would serve as something that complements our Safe Routes to School efforts, and specifically access to Carrboro Elementary and McDougal Middle and Elementary, with the kind of extension of work on Shelton Street to include bike ped improvements from Hillsborough, and really from Maine to Hillsborough, along Shelton Street in front of the Methodist Church there, as well as some other features such as rectangular rapid flashing beacons at some key locations. And I'm also pleased to report we had a productive meeting with the town engineer and DOT just last week to talk through some of those specific locations and try to make sure that we had everything coming together in terms of their requirements. And so I'll stop there. Again, this is an image of Shelton Street to show that other part of that project. There are the two resolutions in your packet, one for the plan, one for the demonstration grant, and I have some additional slides if you want to do a deeper dive, but I'll stop there for now.
Thank you, Tina. Council members, would you like to see those slides, or would you like to ask questions from what we've seen, and then what would you like?
I'd love to see the rest of the slides if no one has
Rest of
questions
the
at this
slides? Yeah, Tina, you can go ahead. Thanks.
Some of these are just a review of the concept behind Vision Zero, which is including physical changes to the street system, as well as reinforcing user responsibilities, both as the bike ped as well as the driver. This is an image of some of the other elements of the grant, the RRFBs, and a sample of some of those locations. A little bit more about the intersections. We've talked about some of these that have come up from community members, particularly West Main and West Poplar. And then the suggestion to add an extra stripe along Hillsborough to create a bicycle lane buffer, and if possible, add some delineators there. And this is just an image of what that would look like. I think you may have seen some of this before. So this is a quick reminder. This is Appendix D of the plan. And this is not the best presentation, but this is a cut and paste just so we have them to talk about. And you can see the different elements here, the high injury network, the different, points of interest. This is a little bit busy. Obviously, Carolina North needs to be removed, and we have shared that. It is kind of ironic that that was identified as a high injury network, maybe for the less skilled rider. And then again, emphasizing the importance of race and equity. And again, just these key intersections and areas of concern. And again, I find it interesting to look at this and see how well, for the most part, it aligns with the projects that we're working on. I think the one thing that was a little bit of a surprise to me is that one section of West Main Street, which is the block between, I think it's, I just looked this up, I think it's Davie and not quite Present Day on Main. That one was a little surprising. And I wonder if it maybe was people crossing the street to get to Present Day on Main. I think we'll do a little bit more investigation there. That is potentially a future crosswalk location. And then Jones Ferry Road, some of this, because the data is a little behind, may not necessarily reflect some of our new infrastructure, so.
Madam Mayor, I think Councilmember Palmer has a
Oh,
question.
did you have your hand up? Yeah. I looked down there. Go ahead.
So just to back up and ask a question about that, specifically that you're talking about the intersection of Main and High?
It's in that general
In the
area,
vicinity, okay.
yeah.
Having previously lived in one of my 7 addresses within a 1 mile radius, having previously lived off of Westwood, there's a bus stop on High, and so it may be people transiting to, so.
Thank you. Yeah, that could very well be it, yeah.
Oh, Councilmember Mayor.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say I'm really excited about this. I really appreciate the kind of spotlighting of key things and kind of connecting those to available money. I guess my question is just, what's the timeline? What are next steps? Like, what are our odds of seeing these things?
Well, the notice for funding opportunities just came out last Friday. We have until, I think it's the beginning or mid-June to put the application together, so we will be working on that right away. We do have a meeting with Chapel Hill and our TPO staff a week from today to talk through the projects and hopefully get some more specific projects listed in the plan as reminders of where, as we look toward the future.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Palmer and Merrill. Councilmember Frey?
Thank you. Tina, I can just add, as somebody who's familiar with that area, that it's, you have the bus stop, but also Maine has just gone over a hill at that point, so folks who are heading for 54 are often, it's a straightaway, so they are often going at higher than posted speed. They've just come over a hill right before you have folks crossing the road, so I'm not at all surprised to find that one on the list.
Thanks for that.
I think the one on the orange spot on North Greensboro, you can see is related to the curve right there. And then for Jones Ferry, I was also going to ask, I'm assuming that most of this data was gathered before the restriping project?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. It'll be interesting to see if we can see that making a dent in
I hope
real
so too,
time.
yeah.
Do you mind flipping back to the larger intersection map, the one that sort of showed many okay, thank you. I think it's worth noting here, do you know how they've gone from the high-risk intersections map to the priority intersections map?
I would have to double check that to
Okay.
be specific about the criteria.
Thank you for that. I'm also seeing another one. There's another intersection that's marked as medium here that is Davy and Poplar, right, which we know was also recently
Yes,
improved.
that's right.
And I can tell you, even I walk and drive through that intersection, and it got a lot safer. Okay. This makes sense. I know this presentation was not part of the packet that was sent in advance. Is this something that
We certainly can.
I would love a copy. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Posada?
No. I thought I saw these on the pack. Maybe not.
I saw some of these.
Some of them.
Some of these images are from
Mhm.
the things in our packet, yeah.
Yep.
Where am I going with this? I lost my thought. Thank you. This looks good.
Come back.
And if it's easier to see, the plan is included in your packet, and it is available to look at from the town's website as well as the TPO's website. It's under the Transportation Vision Zero section of planning.
I remember what it was. The suggested addition of bike buffers along Hillsborough, which portion of Hillsborough Road is that? And when you were talking about delineators, do you mean are we talking about a flexi post, something more solid, or just a stripe delineator?
Sure. For a buffer, we refer to the stripe, so additional pavement markings. We were envisioning from the intersection, really, of Main Street all the way to the intersection of North Greensboro. So, and then for the delineators, that would be the flexi posts. And for a demonstration project, the expectation is that you would measure the success. They wouldn't be necessarily considered a permanent installation. But if you look at that road and the fact that it's starting to look like it could be refreshed, we would anticipate that that would end up on DOT's list. So it would be a good one to do a practice test on.
Thank you. I know that we've recently had conversations about how hard it can be to get DOT rolling on some of these topics. I imagine that this is one way to demonstrate to DOT that there's value in making a change more permanently. Okay. One last question, which is not directly related here. The flexi posts that were on Jones Ferry during the
Yes.
pilot program, do we have a timeline for when those are going back in?
I'll reach out to
Okay.
Public Works and check.
Thank you so much. All right, that's all my questions.
Thank you, Councilmember Frey. Councilmember Haven O'Donnell, you had some questions?
Yeah, this is a great report. Thank you. I really appreciate seeing the comparative material with Durham and Chatham. That really put things into context. I know that took a massive amount of work to get that included. I also wanted to make a comment about the Hillsborough Road. For so many years, we've been talking about Hillsborough Road and North Greensboro. And I want to be sure everything that we have been asking for were part of those. I think there's 4 parts that will be looked at, 4 different sections, I believe. I just want to be sure that everything that folks have been asking for example, I know that one of them is at the intersection of North Greensboro and Hillsborough, and then James and Hillsborough, right? And then, but there's 2 others. What are the?
We have plans to put in a signal, pedestrian activated signal at McDougal already with the ARPA funds. And then we had looked at either through the grant or through restriping North Greensboro Street, James or Quail Roost, that area, something that would assist with getting to Martin Luther King Jr. Park for students. And we certainly looked at that location that you just mentioned, Hillsborough and North Greensboro. We've also received requests over the years at Boland Forest or Robert Hunt.
That's right.
This is the one where DOT said we had to put it on the west side of Robert Hunt for enough, the sight distance around that curve. One appeared, just the crossing at Boland Forest. I believe that might have been installed by Chapel Hill Transit as part of their improvements, because neither the town nor DOT did that. So we are now chatting about, well, what do we do? It doesn't seem to necessarily make sense to move it, and certainly not to put another one at Robert Hunt. So we're having that conversation about, do we enhance that one? Putting one at Robert Hunt and then at Hillsborough and North Greensboro is a little close. So we're trying to figure out the best stick basing. And we've also certainly looked at one at Shelton and Shelton Street and North Greensboro. That one's a little challenging because there's some homes that are really close. But those are some of the ones along the North Greensboro Street corridor that we've been looking at.
Thank you for that clarification. And lastly, on the traffic calming on local streets, I think it's page 75. One of the things I want to note is that there is, for table 3, install a network of bicycle boulevards. So, what was it, 2019? We had the bike boulevard designation for cobblestone. And I wanted to know the status of that, because the sign has been missing for ages. And, students use that to go to the high school and out to Homestead Road.
Sure. There's a couple of different ways that we've looked at that. One is to use what had been identified as a potential pedestrian sign as part of the town's wayfinding system, which included a specific color palette. Another option that we've kind of been considering just from planning is, could we just choose colors, and put like a little hang tag on streets that are better suited for bicycling, low traffic streets, and put out a map, and help guide people. Those are some ideas. These are things that we would sit down and chat with the management and talk about what would be the approach to go. But thank you for bringing that up. Yes, that's on our radar, and those are some of the things we've been looking at.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yes, and I think folks really appreciate that. And just a quick shout out to Dave Mabe, who brought it to us.
Yes, with his idea,
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilmember Haven O'Donnell. Councilmember Merrill?
I just wanted to say that every time a crosswalk magically appears in Carrboro, a case of beer will magically appear at Public Works.
Councilmember Merrill.
I don't know if you're taking donations for your beer.
I don't. I have nothing to do with it. It's all magic.
It's magic. Any other questions? No. Councilmember Swartina, nothing?
Thank you again.
Yes, if you want.
Go ahead, Councilmember Haven O'Donnell. You want to move those A
Yeah, I'll
and B?
move attachments A and B.
All right.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and properly seconded that we move attachments A and B for this item. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, motion carries 6-0. Thanks again, Tina. Appreciate it.
You're about to get Public Works in trouble.
And there it is.
I'm just.
You've just noticed a pattern.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
The magical
Okay.
beer fairy.
Town Manager Tony.
That's your friend.
So we're down to an information item. Do you want to introduce that, Town Manager Tony?
I'll be glad to introduce it,
Thank you.
Mayor. So there's one information item, only for information, no action. This is a police department's equity report. At one point, this was given quarterly. The police department was behind on some of their data, and so they now have caught up. And they also needed to work on some strategies on improving the data. And so Chief ATAC will present the first portion of the presentation that includes some traffic data. And then Monrita, our diversion crisis social worker, will come up for the second half and present an update. So please come forward.
All right, welcome Chief ATAC.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm happy to be joined by Ms. Hughes this evening. Just celebrated a year with the town, so you're going to hear about some of the things she's been up to. And let me pull up the document real quick. Where is that boardroom computer file? Okay. You want to drive your... It should be under police. Once you get me here, I know the route. I can get from there. Thank you. You good now? Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. Okay, well, good evening, Mayor and council members. So this is the Police Department Equity Report. So I'll be covering some of the traffic stop data, as you saw, and then Ms. Hughes will be covering some of the other work she's been doing with deflection diversion and other kind of rounding out our skill set here. So initially, we are in the process of a traffic stop policy review. A couple things going on here. This policy is now 3 years old, so we have 3 years worth of data. The original impetus was to kind of fix some racial disparities, to also make sure that we were not focusing on traffic enforcement that was not specifically safety focused. It came out of Governor Cooper's task force on racial equity and criminal justice. It was their model policy. We tweaked it a little bit to fit the real world, and we now have data. So what has the data shown us for 3 years? Speed and safety related stops as a percentage have gone up. We're just under 80%. My goal is to get that higher. Equipment and regulatory stops are down. They're not authorized as primary reasons for stopping vehicles in the policy. Disparities themselves go up and down each quarter. We've seen, in this case, we're almost 1-to-1, but we've also seen it drop as low as 30% of stops are black. So we're trying to figure that one out. And then the type of charge, we also look at this quarterly and say the types of charge are consistent with the types of charges and the type of sanctions that them, so ticket, arrest, et cetera. So what is our process? We actually had some a new policy changes go into effect today because it's the start of the new quarter. It basically removed 2 non-speed and safety related stop reasons and moved them to reasons you would not stop. So that was going to be with revoked tags and other stuff like that that was not really a speed safety thing. So that should bump up our percentages there on that speed safety. We're also with Chief Race and Equity Officer Ms. Jones McNair. We're also, she brought to our attention some racial equity training additionally. for officers. So over the course of 3 dates, the department will be going through that training. We also will be consulting with the town race and equity staff. And externally, I reached out a few weeks ago to a couple of community organizations. They're listed here, the NAACP, El Centro, ACLU, and the Refugee Community Partnership, and just said, hey, here's our traffic stop policy. We got 3 years worth of data. This is what started it. Do you have any thoughts? So Saturday, I'll be meeting with the NAACP out at the Arena Center. El Centro has received it. I think they're processing it. The Refugee Community Partnership is going to do an internal staff assessment as well as talk to some stakeholders, some clients of them. Have not heard from the ACLU, but I think they've been busy of late. I'll just say that. And then we've reached out. We've got a meeting set up next week with Center for Policing Equity. So again, they're just going to kind of take a deep dive and look at some of our data and see what's going on, hopefully with some policy recommendations. So with that being said, so this is the quarter 4. So this is the last 3 months of 2024. So on the left, we have our aggregate just of traffic crashes, drivers and traffic crashes and ethnicity, and then the census data here on the right. And then here's the traffic stop data for the quarter. Like I said, it's almost 1-to-1 between black and white, the 36% to 37%. Traffic stop by type, we see here the speed and safety is 79%. I'm hoping with these minor tweaks that will bring that higher, and also with the other ongoing process that we'll be able to make some changes here. If you look at the other type here, there's 57. Other was one of the reasons with the driving while license revoked and others that we've tweaked, and hopefully that will kind of go back under the speed and safety so that we're not stopping for those reasons. Here's the demographic, right? And you got speed and safety on the left, and then it works registration, equipment, investigation, and other. And there you see the big other. So that's one of the policy tweak that went into effect today, and also maybe we'll get some feedback from some of the other stakeholders, both in the community as well as through CPE. Enforcement action, so you've got arrest, citation, no action, and warning, just kind of diversified here across the different groups. Yeah, so the no action, sometimes people can wonder what's no action. Well, you could stop a car if it maybe had a safety concern, but it turned out not to be a safety concern, and then that's no action. You don't warn somebody if they're not actually doing something wrong. You say, don't do that. So just to explain that. Traffic stops leading to citation or arrest. So on the left, we have the stops leading to charges, and on the right, in the orange, we have the total number of stops for that demographic. And getting to the use of force, so we had a total of 9 use of force instances, or 2.2% of our reports. We involved were 2 females, 6 males, and then 1 unknown. The unknown, an officer was conducting a property check at a business late at night, discovered a car behind the business, and the car drove off and tried to run the officer over. So the officer wisely got out of the way, but we don't have information on who that was. They did not record that information. The rest of these, one of these tasers, so you see the purple is taser. One was a pointing of a taser, and one was a discharge of a taser. There's no way to discern between the two in our data. Citizen complaints, we had 2. One was a traffic violation on an officer that was unfounded. We were able to, we have body-worn cameras as well as in-car cameras. We were able to verify that was unfounded. And we did have a complaint for a policy violation that was sustained. The officer was incorrect in that regard. Diversion deflection data, so for the quarter, we had 58 instances where the officer at the officer level deflected low-level criminal offenses, and so they're listed here. That was roughly 45% of total charges for the quarter, so we're creeping up. We started around a third, and it's going to vary per quarter because based on the appropriateness of the situation, but we're at 45% for the quarter, which I thought was pretty marketable. And then here's the demographic of the folks that the officers are diverting and deflecting. So when the officers recording this, when they have that probable cause, and they're like, hey, we can figure this one out a different way. So with that, I'm going to ask Monrita to join me. So the clicker's right there.
Thank you. Greetings, Mayor Fushi and council members. So I have been here a little over a year, like 14 months now. I can say it's been a pleasure working here. In that time since being here, as you can see on the slide, that I kind of average 9.5 clients a month, and those clients come through the CJRD, Criminal Justice Resource Department, team lead. From there, I averaged about 16 for the year. But for those 16 people last year, I had 5 to 9 interactions with them, if not with them, with people through their Medicaid, other services throughout Orange County, just to make sure that, you know, they're getting all the things they need or referring them to the proper services. I also attend meetings for the town of Carrboro, so the police department, and also for CCDR as needed. Sometimes those meetings kind of just coincide, and I just represent both parties in those meetings. For case management, I do respond to other towns depending on my client. So if I have a client in Chapel Hill going through a crisis with the Chapel Hill Police Department, the care team most likely would notify me. I have responded with the care team before, and we come up with a plan, and usually I take over from that point. But since it's Chapel Hill, of course, they'll stay around. In Hillsborough, if we have any crisis, we have the 2 social workers out there at the sheriff's office, and also Hillsborough Police Department, and also CJRD. So if I'm needed to go to Hillsborough for those crises, I will respond as well. This other side of the slide, under the police, basically just shows things that I've done on my own with the police department without CCDR. So I had 49 Carrboro community members interactions. That means I either responded with the police, I went to IFC to meet people, or I'll get to the next part, but also maybe a officer told me, hey, I ran to someone, they need this. And so I would go the next day and see what that person needed. We had developed some partnerships. For Carrboro, they were really interested in CIT, but Alliance does not teach CIT to non-police officers. So what I told them is that I would create a slide to tell them about CIT, and then Lieutenant, which is Crisis Intervention Training for police officers, which Lieutenant Deshays and myself did go to Carrboro, and we presented to them the best way to basically call for their clients and request CIT officers. And then Lieutenant Deshays was able to give his, the police officer perspective that I just can never give because I'm not a police officer. And then I was able to give that other perspective as well. I have also been in contact with the Willow Creek Laundromat. Basically, I have come across individuals that may need clothing items that I just don't have a budget for. So in that time, she's donated clean clothes to myself. And right now, we're talking about preparing for the summer and spring months. And then also at the Bottom UC Southeast Raleigh Promise, I was able to get in contact with someone there. They have bus passes that they give out to really people in Southeast Raleigh in Southeast Raleigh. But when I spoke with them, I let them know that Orange County actually sends a lot of individuals to Durham and also Southeast Raleigh because of Wade Mag, Wade Brook, those type of Holly Hills, to see people that may be experiencing crisis or they need those resources that's located out there. So they agreed to give me some passes, and I kind of just identify people as needed for that. For this kind of leads to what I was speaking about earlier with the officers. So at times, officers would email me, leave me a voicemail, and it was quite hard to get back in contact or find the exact information. So we started this QR code with a Microsoft form. You can scan it if you would like, but I do ask that you do not fill anything out. But if you do scan it and you can see the type of questions that I ask officers to get information about the person they're referring, so it could be for any resources that are listed. This graph on the side that basically just shows so far we had 9 referrals. This went live this year in 2025. 50 individuals were housed, 41 unhoused, and the 10 unknown people probably just didn't answer the question. But yeah, if you scan that, you can see those resources. And do have a success story for you all, yes. So one big thing that I've really focused on, along with Captain ATAC and Captain Daniels, has been providing support and working with clients in the community for stability. A lot of teams do get resources, and you connect them to the next person, but that doesn't mean the next person is going to walk them through what they need. So yeah, I got you housing, but you also need Medicaid. You also need medication management, but that one person my job is only housing, so they're not going to do that. So what I've done and what we've spoken about was having an individual create all that. So I'll give you my story. So we had an individual. They have no charges in Carrboro, but a lot of charges throughout Chapel Hill. They did come to me through CCDR. As far as Carrboro, they panhandle in Carrboro, and of course they frequent IFC quite frequently. So from that point, when I got this client, they were involved in the court system. They had 2 charges at that time. And so my goals with them wasn't housing at the time because they had housing in Chapel Hill. Unfortunately, they lost housing. The people that the program they were in was not communicating with the client exactly the things they need to do to keep the housing. They were calling Chapel Hill police on them. And so at that point, they just decided they would not renew the lease. So from that point, this individual did go unhoused. And we had meetings with this individual. We were able to finally find housing, which was difficult due to their criminal record. Most places will not rent to you with a felony, and this person had a felony within the last 7 years. But we were able to find housing out in Hillsborough due to their age. They were accepted. From that point, yay, you have housing, but also what else do you need? So we advocated through court, so they are no longer court involved as of October 2024. Our charges have been dropped. They are working. They are a successful person in the community, and they're very happy. Like, they call me just to tell me they're happy, and I have to say, okay, we can talk another time. So Client H is really is a success story for the Carrboro PD because all the administrative staff have a relationship with this person. They know when they come, why they're there, and yeah, we're always happy to see them come in. In the future, we've spoken about having mental health kits for adults. I do not have one to show you, but I do have a therapeutic bear bag, which is this right here, which is basically for officers to have for children when they respond to traumatic experiences that may involve a child, or also sometimes you just need a distraction for while the parents are dealing with officers. The kids need something on the side to do. So this is something we hope to have for all officers. They've been requesting them. The police department did purchase extra supplies to go in the bag, such as the Play-Doh. We hope to also have parent night out and middle school summer camp. That way, so police officers and myself can have more communication with children in the community and just building a greater relationship with the SROs and police officers in the community.
Thank you. I can tell you my office is right next to Ms. Hughes's, and it's really interesting. I've picked up a lot of things that I thought I knew, and I now know a lot more. So it's great to see the work she's doing. So just some key takeaways. Just to wrap it up here, we do have the review and process, both internal and as well as some external. Still, approximately 50% of our traffic stops end with a warning or no action. Complaint numbers are low, instances of use of force are low, and types of force used are low. And in this quarter, we had 45% officer deflection rate for low-level offenses. And of course, as we know, Ms. Hughes is working very hard on her end. The grant funding was a bit of a challenge, as a lot of people have been encountering. We had the DHHS claw back a grant, but we actually were able to find a stopgap for that to bridge to the next budget year. So that's all we've got.
All right, thank you so much, Chief Atek. And I'll make sure she's saying, I'm going to just say Ms. Hughes, but Monrita.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your presentation as well. So I know Councilmember Posada, Councilmember Haven O'Donnell, Councilmember Palmer, and Frey have questions. So Councilmember Posada.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you both for a presentation and all the work you're doing. So I do have a couple of questions for both of you. Chief, I'll go with you first. If you want to go back to the slide where you have the organizations you're working with that include the ACLU, that are reviewing the policy, just for my own curiosity, do you have like a timeline that you've told folks to get back to you?
So the Refugee Community Partnership has said they'll have staff feedback by, I believe they said April, and then they're going to talk with their clients and maybe have something in May. NAACP, I'll be meeting with them Saturday, so I'll get some better idea. El Centro has said, yep, we got it. And again, I'm going to reach out to ACLU again, so I don't know. It may be great if it'd be all wrapped up by June 1st, but I don't think that's actually going to happen.
That's good to know, right? So, as you probably know, I have relationships with both El Centro and the ACLU. So, if it's at all helpful, just shoot me a message and I can give folks a nudge. I work with Liz from the ACLU it seems like every day these weeks. So,
Yep, they've been busy.
yeah. But if I can be of any use there, let me know. Happy to nudge
you.
folks. Now, let's go to the next slide where it has the reasons for detention that include other in there. Just one back.
Oh, one back? That one?
This one, yes. And you mentioned a little bit, I think I've asked this question like almost every single time. I'm trying to understand, fully grasp the other piece. And I think you already know where I'm going at, so I'll just pass it to you.
So the other category, and we actually, if you recall my explanation, we are kind of stuck with this state form, right? And it's a state form that has no guidance, right? So it's like, hey, so what we have tried to do is define what all of these things, what category these fit into, right? With the emphasis with the policy of being speed safety. So other, we have listed as like if someone is driving while license revoked, if they have a revoked tag, something like that.
Yeah.
So it's not a speed safety, but it is an other, right? It's some other violation that doesn't neatly fit into the categories as listed on the state form. So what we've found with the dive into the data is that those two specifics have been part of this other, and that's part of the, we're like, all right, we had this conversation, we're like, are these truly speed safety related, right? And so that's then we're like, you know what, okay, and let's see. So we've tweaked it. We've moved two out of that, and they're not, we've changed the policy to reflect that, removing that from the initial purpose of stop.
Thank you for that. And I know that you said that goes into effect today, so
Yes.
we'll probably see we won't see that data until
Right, we
further
wanted
down
to
the
do
road,
it at a
but-
quarter so that we
Yeah.
get some clean data.
Perfect. I might have missed it in the packet, but if you could send that over just so like I can take a look at what that,
The policy? Yeah.
that'd be great.
Yeah.
And then if you want to go to the next slide. Yeah, the one where it has the citations and no actions.
Yep.
The graphic on that.
This one?
Go one more down. This one. Okay. So when I'm looking at this, I'm trying to figure out, and I like this setup because I can see very clearly, how these things are working out. I'm curious for example, in the green that says stops leads to charges. You said that also includes arrests in there. Obviously, if you're charged or arrested, there might.
That would count as charges, yes. But sometimes it's quirky. I can actually confirm with our data analyst. But yes, my belief would be that arrests would be in there, but I can find that out.
Because and would that fall like citations and arrests? Yeah, because it's in there, right? So that's what I'm trying to figure out, right? What is like you got a ticket versus you got arrested?
Yep.
That would be interesting for me to know as we take a deeper look in this piece. And then those are the major ones. I think I have some more comments with my colleagues here in a minute. So we'll say again, thank you for all the work that you put into this and for sending this over and to really answer questions. And then I'll go with Miss. Remind me your name.
Hughes.
Hughes. So sorry, Miss Hughes. I can remember faces, just not names. First, can I see the bag?
Oh, yeah.
We want one.
Yes.
We want one. That's all it is.
Okay. Well, Madam Mayor, you may be right.
Oh, look at the bear.
Look, it's a bear.
Oh.
First, huge thanks for all the work you're doing and for bringing an example because this is really cool for me to see. If you want to go to the slide that has a QR code on there. So one, I am very appreciative of being able to see this, and then I can go in there and take a look at it. I was just going to mention, it might be better for us on this council to see like a screenshot of what that looks like, because this is public. So while we won't go in there and submit anything, if anyone's watching at home, they might go in there, and I don't want it. document to be messed up, because I don't know how much work that adds in the back end. But I did want to say a huge thanks for bringing that over, because it gives me a very clear understanding of what that looks like. So again, thanks for presenting that. And then I wanted to kind of follow up on this bag. Do you know what the average cost of this bag is? I see that there is like a little notebook, a little badge, a phone, some Play-Doh.
Yeah, so honestly, the actual sandwich bag with the bear in it, those were donations that the officers already had, the community officer already had. So basically I said, hey, do we have bears? And someone said, yes. So I said, cool. So then I wanted to partner with another partnership. I can't remember the name, but I had saw Gardner Police Department had partnered with them. But when they gave me the pricing, it was kind of expensive. I feel like it was almost $10 a bag for very little items. And so I went to my friends on Instagram and we were talking. I was like, hey, I want to think of some things for to give kids when we go to these calls other than just a bear, because if you're 13, you might not want a bear. But if you have like Play-Doh, it might be really good to squish something. We also do have stress balls. I did not put those in the bags, but the police department did order stress balls. So I did think of alternatives for all age groups. The notebook, myself and Officer Wallace put those together, like in my office. So it was free. It was things we already had laying around. I really didn't ask for much to make them.
Well, first, thank you for your resourcefulness on that.
Love it.
I wouldn't have thought of all the things. So huge thanks for that. And I ask because I think that's a brilliant thing. As someone who facilitates meetings, I bring things for people to play with as adults.
Yeah.
And they're there because they want to be there, right? So I can't imagine being in a situation where you have something that you need to play with, and knowing how, at least some of the kids that I work with are a little hyperactive, giving them something to like handle would be really great. I was also wanted to ask, is this something that an NGO could donate, or is there any regulations around that?
I'm sorry, I don't know what NGO is.
Non-governmental organization, nonprofit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yes, maybe. I'm not sure. Yes. Okay.
Yes, we'd be happy to look at it if you have ideas.
Well, this is why I'm asking, right? Because one of an organization is always looking for ways to incorporate mental health and kind of like different pieces and want to do activities with their organization. And they're always asking, like, we have 15 people that have to do 10 hours because our business wants them to do these 10 hours of service or whatever. If you're amenable, I'm happy to make connections with anyone who's looking for projects, because I think that's a project that would be super helpful and could cost us $0 and some goodwill with some of these NGOs that are looking for places to send their people and their monies to, and if they can send it to Carrboro.
Yes, definitely for the adult kits. The mental health kits that I put up here really are for the adults. I want to put more than just 988 suicide in there. I want other items in there. So I haven't really been able to really know exactly all the items, but if I had like a bigger budget or someone that can donate money, yes, I could spend more time with that.
Yeah, and then I'll follow up, because I think it's a brilliant thing, and just knowing what folks are trying to do specifically, as we saw earlier today, right after the election, after everything that's happening, folks want to feel useful. And yes, donating money to an NGO is great, but maybe pulling that together so that we can create something that is actually helping folks while going through a traumatic piece of an encounter, whatever that looks like. Super helpful. Well, thank you for bringing that over. I'm not going to steal the bear. I already said no. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Haven O'Donnell, Palmer, and Frey.
Well, first I want to congratulate you, Enrica, because we met when I was doing a drive around with an officer. So congratulations on your 1-year anniversary. I think it's awesome, and I think the work that you've been doing has made such a difference. I want to underscore that you brought a success story to us that it realizes the importance of gap care, and you absolutely nailed it. The gap care is what is missing. And I really appreciate not only the story, but the explanation of how gap care makes a difference so clearly. I wanted to ask about the second crisis position. We had a meeting with the county commissioners, and we heard a report. So, how do you see that coming along? We've talked a little bit about timelines. How does that timeline look from your positions?
So the second position is posted again. We went through an initial phase for hiring, and we didn't get anybody on board. The second is out there. We had to tweak the job description a little bit because it was looking at the embedding in the care team, and that was the challenge. And so that's still the plan, is for that second position to embed with care and expand the services over here to Carrboro.
So, for Enrica, how does your time work? Since you're managing this all on your own, because they talked about that at the county commissioners meeting.
As far as how I split up work duties?
Yeah.
As it comes, you just knock it out. Yeah, and so all the things I do for Carrboro is what I've done recently now, because we're planning some things for May. I set aside the end of Thursday and the end of Friday to do Carrboro activities, because court for me is really big Monday through Thursday. So Monday through Thursday is a lot of CCDR and meetings, and then the end of Thursday into Fridays, I do things for Carrboro.
But there's, it seems to me that, you're really, you're passionate, and you're doing the extra mile. When I look at that Carrboro bag and everything that Council Member Posada mentioned is so true. I look at that and I see not only the creativity, but the practicality, the critical practicality. I think, Chief, you always say, you meet people on the worst day of their life. And when I look at that, I know children who've experienced that, and I think that that's wonderful. I think we all need a care parent, but I just think I know that takes extra time. So I want to appreciate the going the distance on that, and and I look forward to hearing about when that next position can be filled. It's very exciting. So thank you for your efforts.
We've already had a few applications, so I'm excited. So yeah.
It's great stuff.
Yeah, just gonna echo the thanks. When I read through the packet, started writing up my questions. Thanks to both y'all for the presentation, and to my colleagues for their questions, because of my 5 questions, 3 have already been answered. So, so to jump ahead then, I think part of it was on the first slide, just as text to the chief. Part of your first slide was forward-looking, which partially answers my last question, but doesn't quite answer my first question that I had when looking through these slides, which is how, is this better or worse than last quarter or the same quarter last year? And I know that that's a moving target, because as you're saying, you want clean data because you want to see, does it change, make a difference? But how do we know in a given quarterly report, is this an improvement or not? And before you answer, this is part of why this is in my head is 2 things. One was the Vision Zero that we just saw, how those problem areas align with some of our demographic patterns, and so you're going to prioritize the high KSI space, and if that is a highly Latino apartment complex that's right next to it, then what does that do? And also a law of small numbers fallacy problem, right? Like we're never going to get to where we only have 3 traffic stops in an entire quarter. But just as a hypothetical, if we did, that would definitionally be biased, right? You cannot get a sample of 3 that meets the demographic pattern. So where is that point where we are big enough that we can know that we're doing right? And I'm going to put in air quotes on that because I don't personally know that. Well, no, let me state that a different way. I know that I should not be the one defining what right is. But I also know that what we're measuring and what we want are separated. So that was way too long a preamble, but can you, can you speak to how do we change these reports in the future so that we know, are we doing better or not?
So to your data points, right? We've had that issue before. So RTI had a, I'm drawing a blank on the name of it, but basically you would submit your data and it would assess. It used the veil of darkness theory, and so it was looking at daylight and evening if there were differences and all that, and it came up with a, if it was statistically significant, if you had an issue. So Carrboro's data was always like right at the cusp or just below of what is actually needed to draw any sort of like a P-score that would be, statistically significant, and that's the challenge, right? We saw during COVID, we had 200 traffic stops in the entire quarter, so that's a much lower number. I think we're at 400 and change roughly. I don't have the number; it's on the slide here. But the question, you're right. The principle of small numbers is at what point do we have enough data to be able to assess it, to draw conclusions? And my hope is, as we look at, especially the partnership we're looking at with the CPE, right, the Center for Policing Equity, they'll be able to say, hey, here's your data. Ideally, this would be X, but you're here, so we can get some idea, right? Because to your point, right, if you had 3 1/4, okay, that's challenging to draw any sort of conclusions, and we've always been, because of the size, and there's fluctuations, but I think we've sort of stabilized. Now we have more people on board, so we're roughly 400 traffic stops a quarter, give or take, I think, for the last 2. So that's a question that we'll want to know for CPE, because I like data. I like data-driven assessment, but I have to be careful because sometimes the numbers are so low. Sure. So the changes that went into effect today, so this will be the second quarter of this year. So we should have some idea, right, from first quarter to second quarter. We'll see if there's a variation, right? And again, can we draw a conclusion based on the numbers? We'll have to assess that going forward. But my hope is that this internal tweak will make some of the corrections we see, as well as that external partnerships will also give some feedback. Because this whole policy was built upon the good intent to fix a problem, and I think sometimes the challenge is you may not be getting the result from the well-intended policy creation that you wanted, and that's that part of this tweaking, right? And try to figure out, get perspectives and all. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, in part, but it also perfectly tees up the second, which is how do we meaningfully compare, as the public speaker came and said, how do we meaningfully compare ourselves to our peers when we're asking, are we on the right path? Part of it should probably be looking at, are we making progress towards relevant peers? Like, we are neighbors to Durham, but that is a very different jurisdiction. So who are our peers? Who are we comparing ourselves to? How would you answer that, or say that we should be answering that?
So I think the intent of the policy was to address a concern, to try to strike that balance. And balance is a term I use a lot, right? That's one of the central focuses of my life. Are we balancing it? So we have this stated intent to strictly focus on traffic safety and try to just mush out the rest of it, because the statistics show, the data shows, the studies show that a lot of this traffic stops are not related to any sort of safety relevant, right? A lot of it is going to be socioeconomics, it's going to be other things. So we want here for it to be focused on that. And the challenge of that is then if the data shows a disparity, but how do we determine if it's the policy, if it's the officer, right? I mean, there's fidelity to policy, right? We have to make sure our officers are trained, our supervisors are trained, so they know that the adherence, and that's part of the supervisory review. And that's, going forward, that's going to be the challenge, right? So if we tweak the policy, if we get feedback, if we make some changes and we narrow it down even more to where it's we're trying to dial it in, what does the data show? Right. And we don't know. We know what we can hope, right? But we just have to see what the real world presents us sometimes.
Well, I've got one more. Hopefully I'm not boring everyone to tears. My last one, that I go around telling people in my day job that I would love to have between 3 and 5 copies of myself, given the workload that I have. And so we'll just take it as a given that you also, as a manager of people, want more staff to accomplish this. But given budget realities being what they are, I never get from my manager multiple copies of myself. You've already teed up on the first slide what you're doing forward-looking, but I guess what I'm struggling with is we're asking you in part to solve what is an infrastructure problem that under current law, DOT can't solve for us, which is people going too fast on Highway 54, just to give an example. And so if we get to a place where we are, fidelity to policy, I'm really struggling with how to frame this, but at what point does this butt heads with, for example, if we're trying to get stop equity, but we have a policy that is pushing in one direction, how does that work? Does it possibly work against equity in staffing? Are they in tension for resources, or in terms of policy? I don't know, and I'm sorry, I'm stumbling with the question there, but if you could speak to that, and then I do have one question for Monrita. Ms. Hughes.
Can you give me the quick repeat of that, just so I make sure I'm understanding you
so,
correctly?
The easy puzzles that I have are when I'm measuring some software performance for a well-defined system where I can control the inputs. The hard things are when I'm dealing with spam for mail, when I'm dealing with bot scrapers, because it's not the software on the other side, it's the person on the other side who, when I change my behavior, they change their behavior. And so I guess I'm grateful to the public speaker who came up, who has been an officer, and I guess what I'm wondering is, at some point, you have fewer than 50 sworn officers, correct? Some significant number of them probably, they are civic-minded people, watch these presentations, know what we want. So at what point does our policy produce an incentive to game the way that stops work that becomes circular, right? So I want equity both in stops and in our staffing, but if we chase numbers, my concern is the risk of, I'm broadening again, maybe I can stop, maybe you got enough.
Well, so there are a number of historical examples of where you have to be mindful of what incentive you're creating, right? And the example that I'll just briefly cover is CompStat. So CompStat was an NYPD crime-based analysis that was well-intended, but it basically created the incentive for, at the precinct level, for people to reclassify crime to make it so that it was safer, not address the crime, right? Not deal with the victim. Are you sure this happened to you? That kind of thing. And so, yes, you do have to be very mindful that you're not developing just creative workarounds that make the data look amazing, but there's still an underlying problem. And I think the reality that I have seen in law enforcement is we have to build policy off of what we hold true as an organization, right? But we also have to understand we work in the real world, and that's that weird disconnect where the academic idea, the policy creation, the question is, at the end of the day, there's still that X factor of human behavior that can impact regardless of your intent. If that sums up and I think my perspective is, as long as we just keep having these conversations, right? So I have a responsibility to make sure, one, that my folks are consistent with their policy, that we build policy that reflects community values, professionalism, and all of these things so that we're not inflicting trauma. We're not compounding problems on the off chance of being officious, right? Oh, well, look at that. Your tag is out. Here's a $300 ticket, right? That's not what we're about. So I think if we build it from that perspective, we make sure that we are following it, and the data's wonky or we don't like it, we have conversations about it. Why is the data wonky? Well, the officers are being consistent. The world is weird. Does that?
Yeah.
And that's not a great answer, but
it's no, and it's not a great world. So I appreciate the answer, and I look forward to future conversations, and I'll yield back. Well, no, I'm sorry. I did have one question for Monrita, and that is, please will you loop me in? I did not expect to, when you held up the bag, start to get teary-eyed, but that is the exact bear that my youngest has. She calls it her oso, and she actually has two of them because we realized at some point that we needed to wash the darn thing. But the first one had gotten frizzy enough that she immediately cottoned on to the fact that there were two bears, and so now there's oso and oso primo. Anyway, more than you needed to know about my youngest, but this is just to say I know how much it means to that child, and so I'm happy to be involved in getting more. You know, I know there's other stuff besides bears for other age groups, but please also loop me in along with Councilmember Posada for getting more of those bear bags out there.
Thank you, Councilmember Palmer.
I'm glad I could entertain you.
Yeah, that was good. Councilmember Frey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms. Hughes, I'll start with you. Thank you for your resourcefulness. This is, your presentation is just showing you coming into this job and over the course of a year, hunting down resources that may or may not exist, putting these pieces together for your clients. I appreciate this so much. I really admire what you're doing. And so I want to figure out if there's a way that we can, you know, in addition to adding another person in that role to work with the CARES team, I'm wondering, is there anything else that the town can do to help you do your job more and better? I hope that in addition to the things that you've noted here, if there is something that would really make a difference if you had the budget for it, I hope that you're passing that on to the chief to go into his budget notes for this year, because it's budget season. And if there's something that you need that we can make happen, it sounds like you're being an amazing steward of the town's resources and doing a lot of great work with them.
Yes, I pride myself on saving money. I spend other people's money like it's my money. I don't just blow money, okay? Yes. So I will say, I mean, honestly, it's money. If you can build some houses, great, but I just don't see new houses popping up that are affordable. So right now, the biggest thing is really just housing. Like right now, Orange County housing is not opening back up until the new fiscal year. So that's since December. So where are these people supposed to go? Sometimes they need hotel rooms. We don't have money for that. Or it's not up there because it was a brief discussion once about having unhoused kids. Like the warm foil blankets and things like that, or non-perishable food items. Keeping those things on hand. Right now, I don't have any of those things. I don't have bottles of water to pass out. I do have a book bag, though, to put items in, so hopefully I can get those items, so when I do walk around, I can say, hey, here's a bottle of water, here's this. I will say some people do, you know, donate from time to time, but it's not enough to always make a difference to multiple people in one setting of going out.
Thank you so much for telling us about that. We're trying on the housing part, but it's going to be slow, unfortunately. I think it really stands out to me that, you know, it's not that you don't need to replace IFC because they're also working and you can refer folks there, but it really means something when you come into contact with someone and you can say, okay, I've got a toothbrush, I've got a bottle of water, I've got these little things that can make a big difference in someone's day.
Yeah. And actually, those type of kits would be great for officers to keep on hand. So, you know, at 1 o'clock in the morning when they might come across, oh, here you go. So, yeah.
Thank you. Chief, I have a few questions about your data. And just a thought to sort of structure where I'm going here. You know, world's changing, not for the better. And it has really been brought home to me that there's sort of two posts that we're having to rest our hopes on in Carrboro as far as policing goes, and policing making a positive difference for Carrboro instead of the reverse, which is our policies and our officers' principles, and those two being in alignment with each other. So thanks for your work on that point. Could we hop to the slide that has the cross tab of the, this one, type of stop by demo, yeah. Do you mind telling us a little bit more of the story? So we've talked about the other, and as you pointed out, there's not a lot of statistical significance in this data, but if we were going to point at something and say, you know what, that might be, this is sort of the largest difference that we can call out. I guess I have a first question about this slide. During the Q2, registration and equipment were not primary reasons that in the policy to stop. So when they're showing up in this data, does that mean that that may or may not have been a primary reason? Does that mean that someone was stopped for that as a primary reason and that was recorded, or is something else going on?
So we have a catch-all in our policy that says if there's a public safety need to stop a car for a public safety need, then this, you need to justify it. So I can look into these little numbers and see what they were. Officers will record all the reasons. So I can look at these. It's a very small number and just see what the initial was. And sometimes we have check blocks issues. Sometimes, again, we have supervisors that are checking data. So I can find out what these are.
Thank you. For investigation, can I assume that means that how does an investigation stop, would you imagine, typically start?
So imagine you have a business, they've reported that someone just ran from the store stealing something. They got into an XYZ car traveling north on North Greensboro Street. Officer's like, hey, I'm right here. I see the car. They stop the car.
Okay, thanks. And then, so to come back to the other, do you mind telling us the story? So it sounds like you're already twigging to this as a potential issue. You're looking at updating the policy effective today. Do you mind telling that story again in a little bit more detail about what is it that you're finding in this bucket and why you decided to move
So we had to come up with our own parameters for definition, right? Because the state form didn't provide anything. So what fell under other, right? So Captain Daniels, who was over patrol at the time, basically looked at reasons for stops and said, all right, here's how we're going to classify it. Send it out to patrol supervisors. Here's how we're looking at it. So that driving while license revoked, that revoked tag, fell under the other. So Carrboro has had a lot of vehicle theft. In the last couple of years, we were up over 100%, 22 into 23. We're still high from last year, not as high as we were in 2023, but there's still significant historical increases. So officers are being very aggressive, right? We have a lot of fraudulent 30-day tags. We have a lot of tags that show up all over the state with the same number. So they're basically checking, hey, is this a car that's typically stolen? I'm running this tag. What does it come back to? And what that was leading to was a number of, the registered owner is revoked, right? So under state law, that's significant. That's reasonable suspicion to stop the vehicle because it's likely that the owner would be driving the vehicle and they're revoked. What we found is that I don't want to use the term phishing because the officers are being diligent. Phishing is more kind of scattered. I'm just looking for some reason, right, to stop your car. That's what phishing is. But the officers were intentionally trying to find stolen vehicles or other stuff. They run across other things that are regulatory in nature, right, to some extent, whether, it's not a foregone conclusion. Someone else can drive your car, et cetera. So it was leading to traffic stops, right? And so then what we looked at and said, okay, is this the intent? Right? Is this the intent of what this policy was designed for? So when you go back and you look at it and you're like, okay, is this a moving violation that is a speed safety concern at the time? Generally, the answer is no, right? You're going to find people that disagree. Some will say, well, your driver's license is revoked, but a lot of your revocations are for missing court and or unpaid fines, right? So we have our criminal justice debt program that is designed to enhance and help that. But that's a lot of it. So are those speed safety revocations? Maybe initially for the initial violation, but they weren't actually what we felt consistent with what the aim of the policy was, if that makes sense. So that this tweak of the revoked tag and other. Now, if they run a tag and it comes back with no insurance, we're still stopping those vehicles because that's that balance, right? We have no insurance on a car, and it may not be correct, right? DMV gets a lot of things wrong. I've got to renew my driver's license by July. I might not have a driver's license if I can get an appointment, right? So there's a lot of issues with DMV with data. So sometimes it's not accurate. But so that other would encompass that driving while license revoke and that revoked tag. Once that's modified in the policy effective today, hopefully that will knock down the other and push into the speed and safety for the initial reason for stop.
Actually, I think I have a follow-up question. So you're saying that it would push it. It sounds like in a lot of these cases, like the example you described to me, the initial reason for stop was not actually related to speed or safety or to the revoked license. The initial reason for the stop was something appears is that you're looking for a potentially stolen vehicle.
Well, you run tag, right? You run a
Right.
tag and it comes back if is the owner's revoked or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So what the policy does now is it change. Okay, the owner's revoked, so that is now not a reason, with absent a safe moving violation, to stop the car. So that's
it,
the
okay.
difference that kicked in.
I was
today.
trying to figure out if running the tag is coming before or after the stop has been initiated.
So generally, if it's investigative, it will be before the stop. Sometimes it's with, like if you're running speed and radar, you may not have an opportunity, right? And some of the speeds we see are significant, so.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Do you happen to have the outcome of the stop for other? What I'm curious to know is if you've begun a stop because the license was revoked, and you find, well, the license is revoked, this is not a speed safety violation, are those drivers leaving without a citation or arrest?
I can find that out.
Okay. It may be easier to figure that out going from here on.
My guess would be that if the vehicle was stopped for, let's say, saying the registered owner was revoked, right, and it was the owner that was driving, they probably left with a ticket. If it was not the owner, obviously you can't cite somebody else. It could if they didn't have a driver's license or there are other issues there, they had a warrant, etc. But yes, I would think most of these stops would result probably in a ticket if that violation was present.
Okay.
The other one, if it's a revoked tag, that's not a charge. That's just DMV saying that tag is canceled. So what we would do in that case is you basically take the tag, you give them a state form, says your tag has been seized. There's no additional charge with that unless there's some other violation present.
Got it, thanks. I think that really does put into perspective why you made the shift in the policy, right? Like this is, I think what Councilmember Palmer was describing as a potential for a loophole where a stop that is not actually supported by policy is happening anyway. I wanted to, let's see, you had a diversion chart as well. Could you come to that slide?
This one or the other one?
This one.
Okay.
So this is diversion and deflection for all encounters, or is this just, are we still looking at traffic stops here?
These are all encounters, right? So if we get a call for, let's say they see some officer sees somebody who's been trespassed from a business, they're like, look, you literally got trespassed yesterday. You could be charged. You need to leave, right? That kind of thing. That's what we're talking about.
And you said that the total here was what percentage of the total?
It's 45%. So what Captain Daniels does is he takes the total charges for the quarter and then looks at this diversion deflection data. So it's not 100% accurate in terms of like, because if we had 15 warrant services, well, that's, there's challenges with that. So those are not officer discretion. There's a warrant here. So it's going to be roughly, based on the data, 45% of the total charges for that quarter.
Okay.
Total charges, criminal charges, and everything.
One of the reasons that that I'm looking at this is because this slide is really helpful at seeing the good that this policy has done for the department and connecting it. But it also opens up for me the next question, which is we're looking really closely at equity in our traffic stops. But it'd be interesting also to think about, are we using all of those, are we similarly thinking about the policy and looking at the data for other stops, non-traffic?
In terms of like calls for service, is that what you're talking about?
In terms of calls for service, in terms of whether or not there's an equity disparity in officer responses to calls for service. I'm thinking here about things like trespassing, suspicious person calls, disorderly conduct calls, that kind of thing. I know that's not data that you have, but I'm just thinking as we are looking for ways to look at our pool of data and see how, we need a larger number of stops, a larger number of data points in order to be able to assess that. I wonder if it's helpful to consider calls for service alongside traffic stops. So because we're talking about, the same officers at different points in time.
So one of the data pulls we looked at is looking at 2024 and pulling like victim stats for crimes, right? So we get some idea who are in a subset of our population, and we have anecdotal ideas, but that's one of the data sets that we're looking at is so who in Carrboro is a victim of XYZ, right? Because it's not necessarily going to correspond directly to any metric we would have. Is that answer your question, or?
Not quite. I think my question is would you be more able to run some of the kinds of analysis for bias that you were talking about if you included calls for service and not just traffic?
Oh, I
in
see
your
what you're
stats?
saying. You talk into a data set that would have enough numbers. So that's probably a question we can ask the police equity folks, right? My hunch is that that's not going to be relevant. It's not going to work because the data set for traffic stops would be within that context, and then response to calls for service, because you have calls for service where there's information, and then you have officer initiated, right? So what did the officer see, right? And so a lot of times, you're like, hey, you were here yet? This could be a call for service, and then the next day the officer sees the same person. So then we have a call for service and then officer initiated with the same issue over the course of 2 days. So we could try to parse that, but I don't.
I think I'm not so much asking a specific data question as I'm asking, we've focused really hard on traffic stops because it's a place where the officer's discretion sort of comes through clearly in the data. But it's not the only place where equity matters for Carrboro. And so I'm just wondering what else we can do to continue to look at all of our police interactions, including officer-initiated non-traffic, including calls for service, to suss out whether or not there are other policy areas that might use some improvement in the future. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councilmember Frey, for your question, because it actually popped up a couple of follow-ups for myself. And I just have a few, just so that I'm understanding you correctly, Chief. In the case that someone is stopped for the tag or one of the situations where you're mentioning, should that be the only reason someone is driving without a license and there's nothing else, more than likely that will result in a ticket, not an arrest, correct?
So generally, our policy has been forever, if you can issue a warning, then a ticket, and then very few will actually end up in arrest. What you'd normally see in traffic stop data in arrests are going to be DWI, and is the person had a warrant.
Yeah.
Those are primarily going to be it. You could arrest for other charges if they were, if you had an assault or something else related to the vehicle, but generally those two are going to be most of your arrest from traffic stop.
Okay, good. That answered my question. And the other one, a little bit, kind of like out of left field, because and it just sparked as we're having this conversation. I'm curious. Do we have any data of anyone of those who have been arrested? There's some kind of data around how many of those are interacting. I know that this is not under your jurisdiction, but have any interaction with ICE while as a result of that arrest?
So that would probably be a question for the sheriff's office.
Yeah.
We don't have a facility, and I know Sheriff Blackwood has been pretty clear with some of the concerns he has as well. But that would be data that we could see I would imagine that would be data that we could get.
Yeah, and I think I can also follow up with the sheriff on that. I'm just curious, right? Because one of the things that I continue to hear now when we're doing kind of these community conversations, and I reiterate where our policy stands when it comes to our police department and how we're trying to work with folks. But it would be good to say, you know what, out of all the arrests that we had, and X number of arrests we've had, we don't have any of these interactions, because I'm pretty confident, speaking with the sheriff in previous years, it's unless there's some kind of warrant already out there, there's really no way, does not honor the detentions. And I know that we don't house folks, we kind of just, here you go, pass them over to the sheriff's office. But I was just curious if there's anything there to note.
And I think the norm generally is there's like a DWI arrest a lot of that can be a release to somebody who's sober or hotel sober, hotel sober. So you're not getting significant bonds like on a DWI arrest, right? Now, if it's a warrant, that's set by a judge. That could depend.
Yeah.
It could be a failure to appear. It could be, we picked up a guy yesterday for methamphetamine sales, right? Just randomly. So that's going to run more of the gamut. But if it's like low-level traffic offenses, the default is generally going to be like a written promise or something like that.
Yeah, and this is helpful. And again, this has just popped up as I was having these conversations because I know that that's one of the biggest concerns that I've received over the last, 3-4 months. That's felt like a year, from community members as we're looking at this. And I want to keep, having the conversation of we're, continuing to evaluate what we're doing, continuing to change policies to really honor our mission of equity in our communities. And when I talk to specifically undocumented folks, it's good to tell them that, not only do we pass resolutions, but we have policies that are actually making folks, put our money where their mouth is. So thank you to you and your team for that as well.
Thank you.
You think all the questions have been asked? April Fool, they haven't. Ms. Hughes, I first want to thank you for your passion, your resourcefulness, your care. I echo what my colleagues have already said about you and your work. I feel like your heart is in it, and that matters when you're out there in the real world doing your work. So I just want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
And if you would like to sit down, you can. Yeah, I felt that. Chief ATEC, so I understand that you're going to be working with the Race and Equity Office for internal consultation with town race and equity staff. So I was wondering if there might be an analysis kind of the police department, perhaps in comparison to other municipalities. Is that something that could potentially happen from the Race and Equity Office? Does that sound like something that's gonna happen potentially, or are we just getting started and we're not sure what's gonna happen?
So I think one of the whole process here is just to have some conversations with other folks, right? I think the CPE, the Center for Policing Equity, is going to have the most data-driven kind of comprehensive policy and procedure idea. I don't know if do you have something you want to add to this, or here, let me do this.
She didn't want to get up. I saw it.
Good evening.
Hey.
Madam Mayor, can you explain more so what you were trying to tease out? Then maybe I can answer.
Right. And so asking the Race and Equity Office for an analysis of the police report, which would be this one, perhaps in comparison to other municipalities, the data that we're receiving.
I think that's something we could, in fact, try to do with some of our, colleagues in North Carolina or even beyond. I think we could. I could reach out and see if there's something they would be willing to give us.
Okay, because your work is probably just starting with the police department, right? Potentially these internal consultations. Oh, you've been tapping in.
Chief ATAC has been.
Y'all been talking.
Yes, quite a bit.
Okay, so I'm going to go back because I don't remember. I'm going back to the Community Safety Task Force, and you might not want to sit down, but I don't know. So I know that there were 5 recommendations, and I asked because, we asked this group to come together and do this work for community and public safety, and I don't want them to feel like their work is in vain. Right, and that they were just coming together and we just put it on the shelf. I do feel like some of these have been met. I'm looking at improving CPD data collection, reporting, and use. I feel like that is occurring now, right? You have data analysts.
Right. We have a part-time data analyst who just graduated from UNC with a master's in mathematics, and he does full-time data analysis as well. So yes, we can dive into data. We're actually trying to build some reports for our own internal use just to get some idea of what we're doing. So if you have ideas, I can pass them on.
And is there other data that you feel like would it be important for elected officials to receive other than this data? And I guess that would come from us if there were more things that we wanted to see. Council members, Chief ATAC would take suggestions of other data that we might want to see. So reforms to police policies and accountabilities, I believe that's happening. And creating a standing advisory board to monitor task force recommendations. I believe where we left that is we were not going to create a new one. We would potentially send any problems or recommendations or whatever over to the REC Truth Black Task Force. Is that what you remember, either one of you?
Yes, that's correct.
So the reallocation, and this is probably the one, reallocating some police department funding to support other services. That was one of the recommendations, as well as develop a non-police crisis response system similar to Durham's HART program. That's working right now. That's coming. Ms. Hughes is a part of that, you know. She's looking at me. I'm just real proud of it. So that's happening. So I believe the only one here is the reallocation of police department funding to support other services, which I presume other community services. And where are we with that? Because I asked, probably because I haven't heard anything about it, or, you know, I'm not going to say I missed it because I don't think that's something I would miss, but where are we with that recommendation?
In terms of cutting positions in the police department?
Oh, I don't think it's cutting positions. I think it's reallocating some police department funding to support other services in the community. I don't know that it would come to cutting like your actual staff, but certainly the police department has a budget, and that's a recommendation that came from the Community Safety Task Force.
So we do have the one position that is already supported in the budget that we're hiring for now. And the budget ask, again, it's all early in the budget process, and I don't want to get ahead of the town manager or anybody else, but there is a budget ask in there as well for a second position.
Okay, and so can this, because I feel like this has not been done, can this become a part of the budget discussion? Again, this is a recommendation from the Community Safety Task Force. We either are or we aren't. I would like to just kind of throw that in as we head into the budget season. I don't know if it would actually come in the form of cutting positions when I don't think you're fully staffed.
Correct. We are
So
not.
I don't know that it would come necessarily from there. I don't know where it would come from, but I did just want to put it out. And I mean, that sends a signal, you know, if we are willing to take a step like that, it sends a signal to the community, you know, that we do want to support some other services. I don't know what else to say about it. That's one of the recommendations. So I did want to bring that out. Thank you. Traffic stops. I think Councilmember Frey might have been talking about this. So how often traffic stops sometimes go to investigative, or there's some type of probable cause when police officers stop cars. For one reason, somebody rolls down the window, hey, your eyes are glassy, you know, whatever. I don't know. I'm not a police officer, but I imagine that happens sometimes. You also said disparities increase or decrease per quarter, inconsistent. Is that an answer for the continuing disproportionality of some of this data? Because I feel like, and I'm going to go ahead and ask you if you think it's still disproportionate or not. I read this comment, disparities increase or decrease per quarter, inconsistent. So however you want to answer that.
So if you look at the aggregate, right here, so the one on the left talks about the aggregate traffic crashes and demographics from traffic crashes from 2023 to 2024. So we're roughly looking at 24%. and 52% for black and white. So the question is that a better metric than census data? And the argument would be yes. That's generally going to be the demographic or the benchmark that agencies use. The challenge that we have is knowing the driving population of Carrboro. There are very unique circumstances that influence Carrboro. If you remember, I think the last time I was here, we talked about the Chambers data on 22% of Carrboro people working from home.
Yep.
So that has a strong impact on what your driving population is. So I think there are some challenges. My hope is in the conversations with the Center for Policing Equity, they'll have some better idea to capture what we feel is a metric, right, that can possibly capture what Carrboro's driving population is. The benchmark on traffic crash involvement is usually what most agencies use, and so you can measure disparity from that. So if you take that as your benchmark, there is disparity. But the question is, what's causing disparity? Is it officer-driven? Is it policy-driven? Is it where the officer is when they're doing enforcement? So there are a number of questions about that. So, I mean, that would be my answer at this point. But delving in with the CPE, I think, those are good questions to ask. Because again, as I mentioned earlier, we have fidelity to policy, right, and the goals of the policy. But there's also things we cannot control, and that's the challenge. Is it officer-driven? Is it policy-driven? Or is it human-driven from the population that we don't know at this point? So I'm hoping the CPE can maybe shed some light on that. You know, is there additional training? Is there additional focus? Are there additional analysis that will give you some idea of what that means?
Okay, so in other words, that's something that you're still working on. Looking for some answers. Appreciate it. That's all I have. Council members? Oh, Councilmember Posada.
I'm the one with the April Fools tonight. Actually, based on your questions, Madam Mayor, I was thinking or wondering if adding a slide to this presentation for the next time we see it, outlining the recommendations of the task force and actions taken thus far on each of those recommendations, would that be a possible amendment to this presentation so that we can actually get some concrete answers as to?
Oh, give it to him?
Yeah. Because like we want to see those, and I think you're right, Madam Mayor, that we want to make sure that folks know that, you know, actions are being taken, and, you know, as we're getting this back, having another slide is like, here's the recommendations and here's every action we've taken under those pretty concretely, so that we can go back and say, here are the ones that we have, and makes sense, at least for me, to have it on here. That was it.
Thank you, Councilmember Posada.
Now I'm done.
I don't think there are any further questions. We appreciate you, Chief ATAC, and Ms. Hughes for hanging with us in this barrage of questions. Appreciate the presentations.
Thank you.
Next item, Town Manager Tony.
Next item is a list of board appointments for our advisory committee, and our town clerk, Lamar Joyner, will lead that off.
Great. Mr. Joyner, thank you.
Good evening. We discussed streamlining the process the last couple meetings ago, and this, you should have received a form with the suggested appointments on how you want to handle that. That is under the council's discretion. But I have a list of the either reappointments or appointments, their recommendation. This is the start of the new process. So if there are any questions, I'm here to answer those. If I have the answer, I will provide it. If not, I can figure out what the answer would be by getting back with some of the liaisons. I think what the easiest process to do is a council member makes a motion to either appoint second for each particular advisory board or commission, and then it can be passed or it cannot be passed, but take a vote after that. We get a second, and we go down from starting at Stormwater Advisory Commission, do that particular board, and then go to Climate and Environmental Advisory Commission, do that board, and then end it with the Recreation, Parks, and Cultural Resources Advisory Board.
Thank you, Mr. Joyner. I think Councilmember Frey had a question.
Yes, quick question about Recreation, Parks, and Cultural Resources Advisory Board. We've got an edit on our sheet here compared, so is there just one reappointment now?
It is, that person just found out that that person would not want to be reappointed to this
Okay.
board. So it would only be one reappointment.
I had a question about Rex and Park because for the other two, we had the applications and the information back from either the liaison or the chair, depending, about their process of deciding the recommendations. But we didn't have that information for Rex and Park, and I was wondering, how many vacancies does Recreation, Parks, and Cultural Resources have right now, and are there any other applications outstanding?
So there are, but speaking with JG, he wanted to get these reappointments done first, and he's sent all of the other applications, and there will be a follow-up for making appointments for other vacancies on that particular board. Actually, his request kind of came in a little bit later than the other requests, so didn't have applications for those, but he wanted these reappointments. And I will say, going forward, if it's the will of the council, are for reappointments, are applications going to be something that you want for all reappointments?
I'm sorry.
And please weigh in.
Okay. Thank you for asking that question, Mr. Joyner. I think you and I have been emailing a little bit about that. I think for me, I just think about having access to all applications, whether they're appointments or reappointments, to have that information. There's an important diversity question in there that grabs my attention, a lot, and potentially others, and maybe some other information, but certainly it's whatever council members want. Mr. Joyner is working to streamline the process, but, it's up to us, and he's asking now as far as like what we want to see when we're doing appointments and reappointments, as he offers up the new streamlined version, which when he presented it, I believe, what was that, a week or two ago? When you
I
first...
think it was about 2 meetings ago, not counting, if we're counting the work session, I think. It was
Right, and I think council members liked the idea of it being streamlined, right? So it's basically whatever, he'll do whatever we ask of him.
And, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mr. Joyner.
If I may, is the request for diversity, is it within anything that is listed on the sheet would help with that, or and would that, if it is reappointments, would you want a new application, or you would want the original application?
So it's a question on the application that, I look at along with other information on the application. So it's actually a question that would not be answered here. This is good because it tells the term served. It gives some demographic information, years in town, employer, so this is good what you have here. Reappointments, I'm just used to seeing the full applications all the time. Councilmember Palmer is new. Merrill, you've not either, right? And so myself and Councilmember Haven O'Donnell, Posada has been here. Frey,
We had just a couple, but not through this process, obviously. But I have been on the other end of that process a number of times. I found it helpful myself, and I'm speaking both as a member being reappointed. I found it helpful to be able to re-answer the questions about why I was applying, because that answer changed over time, and I think that can sometimes be helpful to sort of, not so much to us, I think, as to the chair and liaison, as they're trying, especially for any boards. Hopefully, we won't be back in the position of having advisory board members serving many, many more terms than is typically the limit, or having very tight quorum situations that lead to people being reappointed because of a lack of applicants, instead of because they have something unique to contribute. But I did find it helpful to be able to answer that question over time. And then as a board chair, I found it helpful in keeping track, having the new application was helpful as a board chair in evaluating applicants for reappointment as well. I think we may as well keep it for now. We can always change that, but I think reappointments, I guess where I'm coming from is I don't think that reappointments should be automatic necessarily, because things may have either have changed, the makeup of the board may change, or the interest of the applicant may change. And so I think it's helpful to have them do an application for each term.
Thank you for that, Councilmember Frey, Councilmember Posada, and Palmer, and Haven O'Donnell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I think also I've gotten used to seeing the full application. I do want to say, for the public piece of it, I like this one sheet being the public part of it, because that was my big concern around, like, the applications have so much information behind that it's not just, and we would make that super public. Well, not super public, just public. People can see it. So I like this method of the kind of streamline information in this one sheet and the email with all the specifics. My one ask is, at least in my case, if you can put those into the binder as well, that would be super helpful. Because just the way that my brain works, I just look at what's in there, and I looked at the appointments and I was like, where's all this information? And then I realized that there was a separate email to it. So, you know what I'm saying?
It's to keep it from being
I
published
do.
along with the rest of the packet, though.
Yeah, no. But because a couple of us get the printout, right?
So you're saying you would like all the aggregate information that is in the email to be printed out with all the applications, and I'm just getting clarity on.
No, yes, for sure. For example, at least in the packet, it might just be for me. I don't know for the rest of the folks that get I would like to see the applications. Even though I can pull them up here and review them with my computer, it's just the way that my eyes work. It's just crazy for me. So that I like to see, and I like the privacy of not putting this super public, right? I like the fact that we're holding back people's addresses and all this answers and the streamlined process. For me personally, it makes it easier to get that with the whole book so that I can read through it, make any notes like I've done before. But keep that process. Keep this one for the public piece of it. Does that help?
Yes.
Perfect. And then, I don't know if I already mentioned around the applications or not, Councilmember Frey, I see your thoughts around the reapplication, and I think also being on that side, not as a chair, but as an applicant, I wouldn't think that many of my answers would change differently, but I do think there's some merit to having someone fill these things out again. I don't know if it's not super extensive, so I'm kind of leaning towards also being, for any reappointments, having them fill it out again, rather than an automatic kind of if you want to be reappointed, raise your hand in the meeting, and then, we didn't have to fill out anything else. I do like to see kind of that a little bit more effort. I know that, folks have been working on the committees, and that's a lot of work. But it's also important to have folks recommit and look at what their kind of their reasoning for recommitting is. So I would want to see an application for reappointments as well. I mean, we already have some, but continue that.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was just gonna agree. I appreciate seeing a full packet as a new person because I didn't see it the first time, but I want to recognize that maybe the intent was to reduce burden on people reapplying to retain them. And my one comment there is that possibly a way to ease that burden is to prompt people with what their packet was last time, digitally or by request printed, to say, here's what you said last time, but we do need, you can copy and paste if you want, but we do need you to answer these again. But that might ease the burden to supply it to them for people reapplying.
Very good. Thanks. Councilmember Habermill.
Yeah, thank you for your work on this. I think this is important. I think seeing the full applications material in the printed packet is important because for me, and I agree with Councilmember Posada, it's a way of not only digesting but distilling the information. It's important to be able to see and really think through the kind of experience that a prospective advisory board member can bring to their advisory board and in my experience, I think that's advisory board, knowing what the full complement looks like and being able to take a look at how it represents the community is really important to Mayor Fushi's point. The reappointment, I don't have a problem if, someone who's reapplying updates. I think they should have a choice. I think it's really simple. Do you want to update it? Do you want to leave it? What information do you think council needs to have? But I do want to understand, and I appreciate the point about what is public. I think it's good to have a streamlined version public, but separate for those of us who need to see the full complement. I do want to ask, because I'm not sure if I understand what the process is going forward, very specifically. So let's say with the Climate and Environmental Advisory Commission, there's more than 4 names, but right. So, and there's recommendations. We in the past have always had ballots. Are we still having ballots?
Can you explain?
To vote on the appointments?
Paper ballot.
Paper ballots.
So, meaning that you vote on them, or
Yeah.
within the?
No, that the council votes on.
I
don't know what part of that, where is that part of the process? What is it?
So what we would do is the vote would then go here where you make a recommendation and somebody seconds it, and then that would be the vote that would be made for these particular recommendations.
What we have traditionally done is that we had a ballot with the names for each of the advisory boards, and we would vote, and then the clerk would take the tally.
So for the streamlined process, I was not aware of that. So, but what the streamlined process would do was make this form that I gave you, that only that the council has, would be able to see who is recommended, and or you don't have to take the recommendation. So somebody, for instance, council member can say, I would like to make a motion to reappoint Karen Stein, appoint Brittany Dickinson, appoint Charm Wheaton and Scott Muir, and then somebody would second that. If somebody wasn't aware or they wanted to do each person individually, we could do that as well.
We've never done that because that's very awkward for people in the community. I'm not comfortable with it, and I'm going to tell you why. Because when you're calling each person by name, you are putting their name out in the community, and we're discussing them one by one. That's why we've always done ballots, because the paper ballots protect against that conversation. And many times, you know, there are those conversations. And it also, the way it's laid out, this is almost presented like a slate, you know, all or part. So what happens if, you know, you want part of it and not the other part? Then those individual names get discussed. I don't think, you know, folks in the community already put themselves out there by applying. Public discussion of their veracity as a candidate should not occur publicly. So I'm recommending we can have a sheet like this, but then we need to have the ballots.
Thank you. Councilmember Palmer, and then back to Frey.
Well, did you have a procedure question? Okay, but then, so possibly this is a question for Nick, but so and thank you for this point, because I take your point about not discussing merits or demerits of individuals' names in a public forum. But the question for Nick then, I guess, is, would this qualify as a reason to go into closed session knowing that we would come back out with, here's the vote? No, you're answering for me. Okay.
I don't think so.
It wouldn't really work that way. It is true, as Councilmember Randy Haven McDonald says, we have in the past done this by ballot. It's up to you whether to do it by ballot or not. I think that
they want you to use the mic. They just said it over the speaker.
Can you hear that? Is this okay, guys? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Yeah, you have done it by ballot in the past. I think that what was going on here was that the clerk was trying to provide you with a process. He was not aware of the prior ballot kind of procedure. But Councilmember Palmer, no, there's no need for a closed session about any of this. We've done that before. It's a matter of handing out certain pieces of paper, then the clerk collecting it, counting it up, and announcing the result. So I think that maybe if you do this by ballot, you might have to do it on another day.
Thank you. Hold on, Councilman. I'm sorry. 1 second. And so the asterisks with beside the individuals' names, these are chair recommendations?
Correct.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you, Mr. Joyner. Councilmember Frey.
Yeah, this is a tricky question, right? I think, so first of all, there is, unless a council member wants to make a substitution from the recommendations, there's a very straightforward way to handle the motion that doesn't require a ballot directly, which would be to say, as an example, I move that we appoint the 4 recommended individuals to the Climate and Environmental Advisory Commission. Now, that still gives you a complication. I don't think the complication is actually the vote, though. The tricky part is the public discussion of whether or not, of the merits of appointing a particular person. I don't believe that we have the option to go into a closed session about that, because this is public business. So a little bit like last year, we all had a very uncomfortable public comment session where a member of the public opted to discuss the merits or demerits of a particular applicant with us as part of their public comment. Similarly, we are actually now directed to consider the merits of these applicants and to hold a vote on it. My concern here, I see where Councilmember Haven O'Donnell is coming from, but I don't actually know that we have any alternative that avoids that approach. Because even if we're taking a ballot, well, okay, unless we have no discussion prior to the ballot, which doesn't really, if there's a purpose to discussing why one slate, why one slate or another should be selected, we still have to have that discussion in public and name names in order for it to make any sense. If we don't have that discussion, there's not much point to the ballot.
We've never had that problem before, so I'll just say that.
Admittedly, I'm new here, but we may not have had that problem before, but we clearly have had a problem. There's an effort to streamline because we have boards and commissions that haven't met regularly because they can't make quorum. And so I'm new here and I'm trying to figure this out. And I understand not wanting to make people's personal information public, and I understand not wanting to tarnish someone's reputation in a way who's then, they put themselves forward and then they're not going to be on the board. But I don't, how are we supposed to make a decision if we don't have discussion? Other than just accept the chair's recommendation, right?
Right. And so the position we find ourselves in now is that we do have recommendations from the chairs of these advisory boards and commissions. What we don't have is applications for all. That is, that's missing. I think we had applications maybe for a couple.
We had all but the reappointment for Rec and
All
Parks.
but the reappointment, okay. So are we, the question that is in front of me right now is, are we going to delay this until our next business meeting? Or are we going to go with the chair's recommendations for these 3 advisory boards or commissions? Because it's one or the other, right? So we either delay it until the 15th, or we take what the chairs have recommended for these 3 boards, and we roll with the recommendations of the chair. And so that is where we are. That's where I see us tonight, and let me know if you see something different. Councilman Passat.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I think, I think you're right, as he says, whether we take the recommendations. What I would say is, what I'm saying is, regardless of whether we take the vote today or in next council meeting, whether it's by motion of accepting the recommendations or by name, or whether it's by secret ballot, we're still seeing the fact that, in my opinion, it is our duty as elected officials to review every single one of these, have conversations about the folks that we're appointing to them in open discussion. And I understand Councilmember Havey O'Donnell was here where we would appoint several folks, but the conversations really didn't exist, right? They did not exist. We didn't talk about any of the applicants. It was, we got all of the information, we got a ballot, and then we'd say all right, 4 votes for this person, 4 for this one, 5 for this one, 6 for this one. These 4 folks are the ones that receive the most votes. We would make a motion and appoint them. I have a problem with that because that's just not transparent for the community, right? So why we are thinking of appointing certain people to these boards is important. And I'm more in favor of actually having a discussion, and I don't think we would be alone in that situation, given that other boards across North Carolina have discussions about who they're appointing, whether it's in work sessions or in public sessions, and the vote is obviously in public, or not work, but you know what I mean, regular sessions. So I think the conversation, not so much about the mechanism of voting for these folks, because we ultimately have to vote regardless, is whether we believe it is our duty to have this public conversation or not. I think it is. And whether it's today through a vote or it's at the next meeting through a secret ballot, I do believe that we would be doing a strong disservice to the community and to the voters and folks who are looking at us for leadership to not have the conversation about why we're selecting who and I'm sorry, Councilmember Haven O'Donnell, that is my opinion.
I think you mischaracterized what I'm saying. I never said we shouldn't have a discussion, but I feel that we need to be thoughtful of the fact that when we haven't gone through the material as a council, and we're given, a list, and the only recommendations we have are from the chairs, I think the balloting is critical. I don't have a problem with the discussion. I've never had a problem with discussion. I've been sitting here for 20 years having discussions. I never said I didn't want to have a discussion, but I think we need to be very thoughtful about how we go about the discussion, and I feel like a ballot is the most appropriate way to protect how that discussion is appropriate. Does that make sense? So I'm not arguing, I don't know how you're thinking that I'm not up for discussion about it. I just think we need to be thoughtful about the discussions, but we need to do it, the final process should be ballot, because that is part of the decorum of protecting our citizens.
Okay. So we do have a closed session, and we have a decision to make. So we don't have, how many of these applications are we missing, Mr. Joyner?
Only one.
Just the last two for the Recreation Parks and Cultural Resource Advisory Board, those were the reappointments. And can I just kind of reiterate, so with streamlining the process and kind of updating the process, the staff liaisons, and some of these, for instance, like the Climate Environmental Advisory Commission, they don't have enough to make quorum, and Amy has done a good job with the two members that are still on this board to try to get individuals that they think represent the diversity, whether it is the diversity of what expertise they will bring, not necessarily in who they are, but what they do as far as their expertise. So some of this is being teased out with that. And so we're putting, I would say, more responsibility on the liaisons to get with the boards and make these recommendations to help craft these boards to be effective in their task and their charges. And then for instance, like the Stormwater Advisory Commission, there was one person that applied, and this is the person that was recommended by the Stormwater liaison. So, and then I think for the Parks and Rec, I think they're under the same thing with like trying to have enough people to meet quorum. And I don't want to make this harder than what it is. I do understand there was a process before. I was tasked with trying to streamline it, and the task of the council was to combine some of these boards to make them more effective. And I don't want to necessarily make this harder and push people away from wanting to apply for the advisory boards. I don't think the fact of just the vote itself, by making a motion and second it, would push people away from these boards. But I do understand if you want to go back to what was previously done, that would be the will of the council. I just wanted to give some clear understanding of some of my thinking and some of my experience and some of what has kind of been facilitated with the liaisons.
So, thank you for that, Mr. Joyner. I have Councilmember Posada and Palmer, and then we're going to roll it right around to a decision about what we're going to do.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And my only point here, I was actually going to make a motion, so I'll hold that until after Councilmember Palmer speaks. I just had one thing to add, and that is, I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you, Councilmember Haven O'Donnell, in private. If I misunderstood what you're saying or what my characterization of the comments were not what I meant to say either. My thing is, I think it's very important for all of us to continue to think about transparency and how we're appointing some of these. I think this is a great process where we have involvement from the liaisons, from the chairs. We have the materials. Maybe if anything, I would add is kind of a possible summary or reasoning from chairs of like why if there's things that they're recommending or not. I think ultimately we still have the ability to make any decisions that we want. So, but I also do believe that it is our duty to ultimately decide who goes on these boards. And these are all recommendations, not, we can decide to take them or not. Ultimately, I'm ready to move forward tonight. So whenever appropriate, I will make a motion.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Posada. Councilmember Palmer.
I just wanted to clarify that when I had said before that I would like even reappointments, I don't mean that to hold up tonight. I'm perfectly happy and ready to vote tonight in whatever procedure this council wants, and I'm also happy to revisit in the future if the council's not happy with continuing with this process but wants to amend it. But I don't want to hold up tonight based on process.
Thank you for that.
Madam Mayor, I move that we accept the recommendations for the Stormwater Advisory Commission, the Climate and Environmental Advisory Commission, and the Recreation Parks and Culture Resource Advisory Board.
Seconded.
So it has been moved and properly seconded that we accept the names as presented for these 3 advisory commissions. Is there any further discussion, friendly amendments, or before we take a vote? I see Councilmember Haven O'Donnell.
Me as well, Madam
Yeah.
Mayor. I also have a quick note before we take the vote.
Yeah, I have no problem voting for these recommendations. I want that to be clear. My issue is with the process, and I would like us to have a further conversation about the process. Because I sense that going forward, the process may be a little different and more entangled than it is tonight. Tonight's easy, but it may not be in the future. And there's lots of different ways that this could not be clean and pleasant, and I want to avoid that. That is not the goal here. But it's not this particular set of recommendations, not at all. But I have questions about the process, and I would like council to, at some point in the near future, before we have multiple boards that we have to make decisions about, to have a pre-decision conversation on what it would look like to have these discussions. So I will vote for this without, stalling the process, but I do want us to discuss the larger process of balloting and what does the conversation look like? How does it get framed, and how does it take place?
Got it. Thank you. Councilmember Frey.
I just wanted to say that I'm thrilled that we have so many excellent applications. It's been a long time since this council has seen a slate of appointments from folks who have not served before. And I think it's great for Carrboro that we're getting folks who are new to boards. And to those being appointed tonight, congratulations and enjoy your work.
Thank you for that, Councilmember Frey. And before we vote, I did hear continuing concerns about how we discuss appointments and reappointments. Also, the paper ballot, how important that is. And of course, Mr. Joyner, as he attempts to streamline this process. So all of this, we need to get our ducks in a row and talk about, because this cannot and should not happen again, as far as like this level of discussion around appointments and reappointments. I understand that it's happening like this because of the change. But I do agree with Councilmember Haven O'Donnell that, we all need to be of one accord about how we want to see it move forward. And so that would be before we would do any further appointments or reappointments. Are you ready for the question? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
That was quick. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Thanks so much, and thank you, Mr. Joyner.
And I do want to apologize because obviously the process wasn't explained, but this was the process that was presented during the streamlining of the process when I presented this. So I apologize if it was confusing.
Yeah, we'll get it straightened out. Council members, so we do have a closed session, or we're going forward with that tonight. And we will take like a 5-minute break. If I could get a motion to go into closed session.
Madam Mayor, I move we go into closed session for a personnel issue. Thank you. And we do not anticipate we anticipate ending the meeting immediately after coming back into open session at the end, yes?
Well, right, and there may be a vote.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you so much. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We're in closed session.
Family.
mine down
Yeah, so
before
you
I
have
came.
the knowledge. That's good. It's okay though, because we'll just have one item.
They're live now, so.
Madam Mayor, I move we return to open session.
Second.
All right, so it's been moved and properly seconded that we return to open session. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. And
Motion to adjourn.
there will not be a vote. There will not be a vote in open session.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
You're busy looking at your phone.
There is a motion to adjourn. All in favor, please say